Just off the shoreline of the Atlantic Ocean, the state of Florida boasts the original speed test for all of NASCAR. The track that needs no introduction. Daytona International Speedway. It's always good to open up a season with a run or two at Daytona, stretch everybody's legs, work out the kinks, and just get up to speed, literally and figuratively, to just work ourselves into a new season. We're doing that tonight, the first race of 2021 for NORC, happening here at Daytona. It's going to kick off a wild Season 13.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. And first of all, hello, everybody. Happy to be here this evening for what I expect to be a thriller, which is normally a trend, I would say, with the Daytona International Speedway. But I think you said it all in your intro there, Andrew. You know, this is an opportunity for these drivers to put themselves in another class. And what I mean by that is we have no backbone to go off of for 2021. Now, this is a series that's been in operation for over a decade, so there's a lot of information to comb through as far as, you know, how some of these seasons unfold, what type of car they've used over the last few years. But this is going back to something we hear Dale Earnhardt Jr. talk about it a lot. You know, he used to love the fact there was a preseason opener on a Daytona Oval, typically a relatively short race, a fun car to drive, and it's a thrill for us who are able to sit back, relax, and watch it. Well, tonight we got some drivers coming out of a field and an organization and series that is known for breeding a lot of talent. And I think we're going to be privy to 100 laps of pure excitement on the high banks. And one of these drivers is going to start their 2021 NORC season with a little bit of an edge, some momentum, and a whole lot of confidence.
Let's take you through that starting grid. Eric Brennan off on pole. It's going to be Aaron Smith in that yellow number 70. With none other than Elijah Drew Gracia to his outside. Checking in third, it's going to be Howie Briss in the 97. David Schutt, four-time winner in the NORC iRacing Series, will roll off fourth. Rolling off fifth tonight, it is Femi Ola, then Daniel Falkingham to his outside. He's got a few wins as of late as well. Will Klein at the line. He's going to roll off from the seventh position. Freddie De La Rosa making an appearance this evening. He'll roll off from eighth. Starting ninth and 10th, it's going to be none other than TCB, Terrell Baker, and Cody Miller.
Just outside of the top 10, as we go back to row number 6, is where you'll find Spencer Owens lining up in the inside and 11th spot. Outside is going to be Zoltan Herzig. Herzig, that is. I promise it's the only time I'll botch that one tonight. Going to roll off at 12th spot. Tommy Gossett in the 80s going to start inside of row number 7, and 13th and 14th spot is going to be that of Sean Williams. 15th, we've got John Berry rolling off from the inside of row number 8 in car 74. Outside is going to be Nicholas Carreso, who's the fastest car in practice at car 30, going to come from near the back of the pack. And rounding out our field tonight in the 17th position is going to be Cole Freilich, who is scheduled to roll off in that 17th spot in car number 15. And that is your starting grid here. 17 cars slated to go for, as we mentioned, 100 laps for the preseason kickoff to the 2021 NORC season.
The NORC Classic field up out of turn number 4, getting ready to turn loose for the first time in the new year. It's Aaron Smith out ahead. He's going to bring us down to our starting line. The pace car going to peel off, and we are going to go green flag racing for the first time in 2021. It's the NORC iRacing Series. It's the NORC Classic from Daytona.
And a good jump from the pole as they come down through the tri-oval here. Already a couple drivers elected a slot in the somewhat double-wide formation through 1 and 2. Kicked up to the high side was Elijah Gracia. Going to lose a couple of spots there before they come off at turn number 2. He'll slot back into 4th position as they head down the back straightaway for the first time, looking way down to the inside. A driver we've talked about many a times already, and we're going to be talking about a lot of times tonight. Femi Ola in the black number 3 going to be scored tonight as the 18 inside of turn number 3 and 4. Howie Briss in the battle for second as they come off turn 4 to complete lap 1.
They're going to come flying by one of our speed shots here at the start-finish line. There they go, and somehow Femi Ola in just a lap is going to be challenging Aaron Smith for the race lead. How out this number 3. Scored as the 18. It's only lap 2 now of 100. He's up there battling for the race lead.
You can see just how yawed out the back end of these cars are getting. Through the corners is Ola, bouncing around the back end of that race car there. Now struggling a little bit on the bottom. He's going to lose a spot there to our reigning champion in Herczek, who started back in the outside the top 10. He's all the way up now to 3rd is that of Herczek, and he's trying to follow Schutt, who's cutting a trail to the front. And here comes Herczek. You're on board with him as Smith bottoms out there in 1 and 2. He'll go down to the bottom, does Smith, to protect the inside from Schutt, while Herczek nearly grazes the wall off of 2.
You can see how hard they're fighting their cars. Herczek going to make the move down to the bottom side. Zoltan gets right down to that yellow line. Going to pass the yellow number 70. Take the race lead here on lap number 3. Our reigning champion out front of this NORC Classic field. Schutt with a great save out of turn 4. Howie Brisk going to fall into 4th. And don't look too far. There's the 42 car of Elijah Drew Gracia. This throwback HEB paint scheme is Cole Fralick goes purple on that lap. The 42 is looking good in behind these guys, but he's got to worry about now Femiola out the back end of that 42. You can hear these guys bottoming out on the pavement. Nobody's lost the draft except for Terrell Baker, who has had some kind of problem here in the early goings. TCB, unfortunately, 3 laps down.
And that's what Rose is starting to do just behind. Where'd he come from? We haven't talked about that driver up in the top 3 all night. He's now trying to take 2nd spot away, and continuing to try to close up comes Freddie De La Rosa. He's in the runner-up position as they approach turn 1.
Freddie D down to the bottom side. He's going to take 2nd place away, and you can see how sideways they are. He might go up the racetrack. There he is. He's up in the wall. He's spinning, and he's going to wreck. Oh, he's going to take Smith. Smith going to the moon faster than Dogecoin. And oh my, we've got our first caution of 2021. And he's a turtle. He's no longer a Shiba Inu. He is a turtle.
And that is Aaron Smith, who started on pole. Wrong place, wrong time. And Andrew, just as we were talking about the charge up through the pack for Freddie De La Rosa, it suddenly comes to a close as he could not hang on to the car after moving up into that 2nd spot. Thought he had it saved right about here, and then he overcorrected and shot back up in front of Smith, who then launched up over the nose of the 42 on the exit at turn
tough to work
2.
with, and actually it was really the center of the corner. You can see how loose the 72 got, and here's the wild ride for Smith. Oh my. He's up on the top line, and pace car lights are out. The reason he's up there solo on the top side of the racetrack, Eric Brennan, is we have single file restarts all night long. As an NASCAR purist, as somebody who loves old school, NASCAR mechanics in general, NASCAR rules, etc., I am a massive fan of these single file restarts. It might take a lap or so to get quite exciting, but it just, I don't know, it looks cool when you have a field coming down to the green flag single file. They do exactly that. It's lap 17, now lap 18 of 100, with firearm back up, and they get off and going.
Yes, certainly. That's why we keep our eye on him, or at least one eye on him.
Whoa!
Trouble! Herczek! He gets into the wall and spins in front of the pack, and also involved the 25 who had problems early, and Tyrell Baker, and it's going to sweep up just as we were talking about John Berry in a multi-car crash that happened in a 3-wide battle for the lead in 1.
You can see the 3-wide starting to take form. Howie Brisk down to the bottom side. Oh, I see exactly what happened. Just ran out of room. David Schutt trying to give room to Howie Brisk down to the bottom side. Ends up door banging Zoltan, and it looks like the 28. Cody Miller has a little bit of damage, but he's still up there. Decently clean, mostly straight. We'll see how he falls into all of this as we go back green flag racing. Coming to lap 24 of 100. Howie Brisk off and away already side by side for 2nd.
Didn't take long for Miller to decide he wanted to try to head a little bit further forward as Miller is on the bottom of the racetrack in that black and white car, sliding his way up here to take over that 2nd spot. He's got some help from behind.
And don't look too far. He's still a couple of laps down, but Terrell Baker, TCB, up here mixing it up with the race leaders despite being 1 lap behind. TCB is a hell of a plate racer himself, and he is working on Zoltan right now. He's going to look high. He's going to go with it. Does he have help? He's got David Schutt back there, but not too close right now. The 25 car up to the outside. It's turn number 1, sideways, drifting, and oh, we've got another big one. Howie Brisk! Oh, no. John Barry gets a piece. Cole Freilich around. Will Klein involved.
Work his way up to the race lead momentarily, and he might have sent it off in a 1 and 2 a little bit too hard as the back end stepped out on him, and he took out a driver who, unofficially, according to my count, may have led the most laps tonight in Howie Briss in the John Deere machine, and head on into the wall goes Briss. Sean Williams escapes another one. He slid there, did make contact with the left front of Baker's car, but after bouncing off, Williams was able to continue driving forward, and you saw Femi Olot in the grass as well.
Zoltan Herczeg going to lead us down to the latest green flag of the evening. It's lap 40 coming to 41 of 100. Cody Miller in tow. Bit of a checkup there on the outside line. Tommy Gossett already shuffled down to the bottom, and we are 3 abreast. We were 3 abreast there for a moment for second place.
The top 2 are starting to open up a little bit of breathing room, and that came in by virtue of the assistance of the slide that we saw out of Miller, who was in 3rd position. But even though they've got some room, they're not done racing for the lead, as Schutt had a peak down low off 2, and they'll duck back in the draft.
That might have actually just been breathing the nose of that Monte Carlo. He's got some damage, got to make sure it stays cool. But look at the gap these two have opened up. If they just maintain this for a while, they'll have to go through a fuel cycle. But, oh my, they have really opened up this race for them. I say maybe he was just breathing the nose. No, he's going to go down to the inside. We are going to race for it down to the stripe. This is to take halfway, and it's Schutt at the line. Takes the top spot away.
Sound art is a product that is a speaker and it's art. We combine it together and we call it sound art. What makes it so unique that any picture can be your speaker? Sound art gives you the high quality sound without the ugly speaker. This isn't a picture with a speaker, the picture is the speaker. Just imagine your wedding picture uploaded onto a canvas and now it's speaking 10,000 tunes. I mean, it's a very cool concept. What we like so much about it that you can take anything that means something very special to you, upload it on the canvas, have it hanging up in your room, your balcony, and now it's a speaker. I mean, how cool is that? It's something that we have that and no one has. No one has this product. It's just a great gift to give anybody. It's just a neat concept. Around here we say, art never sounded so good.
After months of quarantine, we're all interested in how we can become our best self. The team at Permanent Makeup and Cryo is here to help you get the flawless makeup look every day without the extra effort or time. When it comes to your appearance, you deserve the best care that money can buy.
Oval Sim Racing's biggest personalities meet the biggest stage, Daytona International Speedway. It's a venue all too familiar to NORC, but a car that's grown a stranger over recent years. Tonight, NORC makes its return to the NASCAR Xfinity cars to open Season 13. Welcome, race fans, to Pit Stop TV. Eric Brennan and Trey Shuttlesworth join me on the mic this evening. We'll have Emerson Arden on our social media coverage here in just a little bit. My name is Andrew Cardinale IV, and this is Pit Stop TV's live coverage of the NORC iRacing Series. As we know, you have many options to fulfill your sim racing viewing needs. We thank you for doing so here with Pit Stop TV and tuning in on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. We've seen the NORC Classic. In fact, you guys just watched a few highlights from that back in February. We've seen the Daytona 500. Now, we finally get to see NORC Season 13. We finally get to open this much-awaited season on the high banks of Eastern Florida, the high banks that hold so much racing history and prestige.
Yeah, and Andrew, I'll tell you what, I'm very excited for this event here. And first of all, hello everybody, wherever you may be watching. This is going to be a fun evening and a very fun season for NORC in 2021. And Andrew Cardinale IV already touched on one of the biggest variables, the fact that we are running the Xfinity car. First time, according to my notes, which Andrew helped me compile here, since Season 7 that we've had this car being used in competition for the season. And when you start things off at Daytona, this is an opportunity for you to set a tone. And although this race often carries a number of variables and circumstances that may be outside of a driver's doing, it is a chance, though, to put themselves atop the championship standings, first in the win column, and the first one to claim top honors here to kick off this season with a lot of variables and unknowns, considering the fact this is the first time we've seen this car in quite some time. A great place to set the stage, a great platform to do so here on Pit Stop TV, and I'm excited to get this underway. I think this is going to be a very thrilling night here of racing action with NORC to kick off their season.
Yep, without a doubt, I wholeheartedly agree with you, Eric, and it's a pleasure to join you two in the booth, and I hope everyone out there is having a good night. I think we are in for an excellent race tonight. And yeah, as you said, Andrew, I didn't realize this until today, but it's been about half a dozen seasons since NORC has utilized the Xfinity Series car, or the Beat car, if you will. And yeah, I definitely feel it's going to be a bit of a handful tonight. It's, of the current three stock cars, it's definitely the one that feels as if it drives the heaviest conventionally, and it's also a car that doesn't have a really tall spoilers at these super speedways. So it's definitely going to be a handful for these drivers over the course of 250 miles tonight here at Daytona International Speedway. And I can't wait to see who comes out on top. And as you said, Eric, you do have to send a message out there with it being not a full-length season as you might see in real-life stock car racing. These guys only have 25 races to go out there and prove something, and there's also a chase, so the clock is even shorter.
And Trey, I'm so glad that you bring up the schedule, because I actually made this earlier today, expecting to segue into it. This is the NORC Season 13 schedule. Daytona, top of the list, as you might expect. Well, and as you're seeing this evening. Kansas next week is going to be interesting, I think. 134 laps is 200 miles, and that's going to be a nice way to kind of ease us in, along with Michigan. But then look at race 4. Straight to North Wilkesboro, very, very early in the season. You have another 1.5 to kind of smooth things out a little bit, Kentucky. But even at Kentucky, I think we're going to see a lot of very close racing, a lot of side-by-side racing in early goings, then long runs, I think, are certainly going to come our way with these NASCAR Xfinity Series cars. Road Atlanta makes its presence known on the schedule. Race number 6, 40 laps down in Brazelton, Georgia. That's going to be a lot of fun. Got Dover, Homestead, the iRacing Super Speedway. How about that for round number 9? I was on the list. The Nashville Fairgrounds, 175 laps at the Nashville Fairgrounds. That is going to be amazing. You got all the way down to the first half of the schedule, Eric, and we've got a double. The Talladega Duels, 30 laps apiece, will take races 13 and 14.
That's got to be one of my favorite notes on the schedule. When you watch a restrictor play race in any form of motorsports, whether it be in sim racing or real life, a lot of people wonder, why are these races so long? Typically things, just go down in the final 20 or 30 laps. And hats off to the people who built the NORC schedule, because they're going to give you back-to-back rounds, round 13 and 14, of just that, just 2 dual races on the super speedway, 30 laps apiece. That's guaranteed to be intense all the way throughout. But the versatility continues. Another short track in Martinsville. Road America America, Atlanta, Legacy Daytona before they kick things off in the championship chase. And if you want to pick out a crop or a top running driver or a champion as they're going to in that final run of the playoff races, Trey, I can't think off the top of my head with all the tracks that are in the sim, specifically for that of stock cars, of a more diverse run to try to see who really is the best of out of a series that has really produced a lot of top-tier sim racing talent.
No, I definitely agree, Eric. It's a schedule that is diverse all the way around, very consistently diverse. I do look to the chase, and that's where I see probably the most consistency within the schedule. Looks like we have a handful of intermediate tracks there, including the season finale, the site, rather, of the season finale, Las Vegas Motor Speedway. But no, I think there's a lot of good elements that are going to make this a very competitive and entertaining season. The distance of the races, I think, is a pretty healthy length where we should see a fair amount of comers and goers. And as you said, Andrew, I would expect a lot of green flag running and guys having to manage their tires over the course of a long run.
Absolutely. Tires. That's going to be the forefront of everybody's mind all season long. This might be the one exception. The first race here at Daytona might be the one exception to talking about tires. I guess Talladega there as well. But everywhere else, we're going to be talking about the tires, maintaining tires, even Legacy Daytona. When we come back here for race 18 to set the championship stage, that is going to be a race where drivers have to save their tires a little bit. If it's any kind of warm, that track, the older version here of Daytona, is going to wear out the Goodyear rubber on these NASCAR Xfinity Series cars and really make things a whole lot more interesting. Talking about that chase, Eric, Trey, you guys both touched on it. There's diversity while at face value looking a little bit tame. Look at Indianapolis. It doesn't seem all that crazy, but it is one of those races that is certainly going to make drivers work on the racetrack. You've got to be on top of things. You cannot get left behind. It's going to be so tough for these drivers to move back up to the field if they do, start to fall behind. That said, they've got to maintain their tires. They've got to make sure they don't push too hard into turns 1 and 3 especially and go flying off into the safer barrier. Texas Motor Speedway, that's going to be one of the more tame races, I think, for sure. I think turns 1 and 2 is a little bit sketchy. Turns 3 and 4, classic Texas. And we'll kind of see how things go before we get a real idea of how Texas is going to race. You've even got Chicagoland and Las Vegas to round up the schedule. A couple of relatively tame 1.5s that will still give us really good racing. Chicagoland, of course, the version that we have on the sim, very, very worn out. It's a little bit older than, or I guess a little bit newer pavement than what we see in real life now, but it's still very worn out. It gets warm, it gets slick, and it puts on great racing. These cars should be no different. Las Vegas to settle the finale, I think, will be very similar, but those 3 races in the middle, Bristol Dirt, Darlington, and Phoenix. That's where things get interesting, and I think on both ends of the chase, a bit more normal, but right in the middle, things are going to get tough on these drivers, and I'm all here for it.
Yeah, and you point out the same nature of the schedule, but I mean, I really like the fact that these are tracks where drivers ultimately shine. And, you know, when we saw on the NASCAR side that Chicagoland wasn't part of the 2021 schedule, a lot of people scoffed at the notion because the track matured enough to provide great racing. And now that's exactly what people are saying about Las Vegas. So all the way through this season, we got a little bit of everything. I think the playoffs are designed to really spotlight who the best driver is going to be when all's said and done after that 134-lap contest in Vegas. And Trey, as someone who, and I will selfishly admit that I'm a little bit new to some of what NORC has been able to put together and do, and I got to credit Andrew Cardinale IV and everybody on the platform for bringing me up to speed. This series is a lot of fun. This schedule highlights it, but let's not, water down the fact these guys are competitive. I mean, we got to hear some of the pre-race chat going into this race, and although there's a lot of continuity and there's good morale amongst this group of drivers we got assembled here tonight, every one of them wants to win, or at least thinks they want to win more than the other driver they're going to be going up against here tonight. And I think that's the big reason why we were all so amped up for this season opener. These guys are as competitive of a group that we've ever assembled, and I think tonight is the best place to kind of display that with 100 laps in this Xfinity car.
Without a doubt, Daytona International Speedway, both in real life and oftentimes on the virtual side of things, tends to be a place where, it's a good place to open the season, despite the fact that there is, there's definitely a lot of unpredictability in coming to a super speedway. But if you play strategy right, you can definitely still come out on top, and it just brings so much momentum going forward into the season. And the length of a 250-mile race, a little bit less than what you'll see the NASCAR Xfinity Series open with, shouldn't make too much of a difference in the long run. Guys aren't going to be able to settle in for too long. In theory, you would only have 2 green flags. Oh no, I believe it would be 3. I I have to correct myself. You'd be on the border of having to do 2 or 3 green flag pit stops all the way to the end, so you really never can settle in too much of a rhythm, and that's barring any caution flags that might occur.
Yeah, and one big thing is we are on full fuel loads this evening, 18.7 gallons, whereas we see a lot of NASCAR-style leagues on the iRacing.com service, in fact, that we've covered over the last 6 or so months, where they run half fuel. Not the case here in NORC, 100% fuel, 18.7 gallons as opposed to 9.4. That's going to change things up a lot. That's going to mean these drivers can use the full extent of their tires, and maintaining tires then is going to get so much more important, because it's not just shrinking the tires down to meet the fuel. You've got to lengthen the tires out to match how far you can go on fuel, and when you do save tires, usually you save fuel, so that's going to lengthen that run even longer. You've got to find then the sweet spot towards the end of the run where things fit. We're looking here at the track map of the Daytona International Speedway. It needs no introduction. It's very simple, yet also complicated. I think the most complicated part that we talk about each time we come here, Eric, is the 18-degree tri-oval. We've got this speed shot set up in the tri-oval. That's where things will get a little bit tricky. Everything outside of that, sure, it'll still be tricky, but it's up to the field at that point on how tricky it gets.
Yeah, and that tri-oval, as you mentioned, it looks tame. 18 degrees, it's nowhere near comparable to what they're going to be dealing with in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But we keep harping on the fact that NORC is using the Xfinity car this season. Well, in the sim, these cars draft differently than the Cup version they ran for the NORC Daytona 500, and obviously differently than the 87 version cars that they ran in the NORC Classic, the highlights that we aired coming into tonight's broadcast. That is something that you are only going to be able to rehearse a few times throughout this practice session, is how that car behaves in all sorts of different situations in that portion of the racetrack. And as you see, these drivers are doing all they can to simulate that racing venture, but when we bring these cars down double wide for the green flag, these guys are going to be in positions that they're not only double wide, perhaps 3 wide, hopefully for their case not 4 wide till later in the going. And the car is going to react differently at that portion of the racetrack. And if you get down on the apron where there is a transition, it's not as abrupt as you see here in the corners. But if you do get the left sides on the apron of the racetrack, not only is that oftentimes a no-no zone for some of these competitors, but it will greatly upset the handling of that car and pretty much probably send you and perhaps the rest of the field for quite the ride.
Yeah, these cars are going to be a handful for all 250 miles. Unlike the Cup car, which has a fairly tall rear spoiler, these cars have a rear spoiler that's nowhere near as tall. It's around a similar horsepower output, but the cars could be much more of a handful throughout the corners without having all that downforce that you rely on in a NASCAR Cup Series car. But what we conventionally tend to see, at least in fixed racing on the super speedways with the Xfinity Series cars, is a car that is very prone to bump drafting. Especially on the straightaways, and it's also very prone to a lot of side-by-side action. Can be a little bit difficult to make the outside line the dominant line, but multi-lane racing is definitely incredibly prevalent with these cars.
Absolutely. We're going to see a lot of different tracks change in different ways throughout this season of NORC. I'm just so excited. We've talked about Cup cars for a long time here in NORC. We've gone back and forth between Cup cars and NASCAR 87 cars that we had last season and season 12. It's been a while since we've talked about the intricacies of the Xfinity cars, as Eric mentioned, since season 7. And just for a little factoid, who won the championship in season 7? Oh, that was Freddie De La Rosa. How about that for a throwback? Femi Olot, the NORC Daytona 500 winner from this year, he was second in the points, and Jared Darling went third. And I'll try and find real quick who won that race. And I gotta refresh myself here. I believe that would have been... I'm not exactly sure anymore who won Daytona that year. But actually, hey, we can mention the fact that nobody has been quite as good here as Marcus Richardson when it comes to the NORC iRacing Series at the Daytona International Speedway. Nobody else has gotten any more than 2 wins, those being Nick Northrup, Terrell Baker, and Cody Miller. Everybody else, it's usually you get 1 win, and then we might see if you show back up. It's really hard to repeat in NORC at Daytona. I expect to have to look through a deep part of the field to find today's winner. It's not going to be your conventional normal race winner that we'll see the rest of these 24 races.
Yeah, and I will say, when you look at super speedway racing as a whole, as we see the checkered flag flying on this practice session that we were privy to kind of tune in on, when you look at super speedway as a whole, a lot of people always view it as just a total crapshoot. If you're in the race, you've got a shot. But when you look at the record books, you happen to sometimes see similar names wrapping up wins. But I'm with you, though. Andrew, I believe that tonight's winner may be a bit of a surprise, even though we could expect to sometimes see familiar names up front, names that you've already mentioned, names that we're going to reference here in the upcoming qualifying and race time that we're about to have, that many would know as obvious winners in the past, obvious winners that you could pencil in for this season. But this is an opportunity for somebody to separate themselves from the pack and maybe get an opportunity to grab a win at the track, which they may or may not be as competitive once the season gets into its greater strides on some of the mile-and-a-half tracks, the short tracks, and even a couple of the road courses that are on the docket. This is a chance for somebody to set the tone for their season early, and it may not be a name that we're accustomed to calling across the finish line when all is said and done.
It tends to be 50-50 in some cases as to whether or not you get the underdog at the super speedways. Unfortunately, looking at the trends of, if you will, the NORC Speed Weeks coming in, that we've, the two events we've seen over the last month or so, both the Daytona Classic and the Daytona 500, we saw guys that had really good pace, or are known rather for their really good pace, go out and win. And that's Zoltan Hertzeg in the NORC Classic, and then Femi Olot, the NASCAR iRacing Coca-Cola Series driver, claimed the Daytona 500 victory. So trends may not be looking towards an underdog, but as always, it's Daytona International Speedway, and anyone has a shot. And at this point in time, we have qualifying underway, and these guys have 2 laps to go out there and set the quick time.
And already we're seeing the different strategies here in this qualifying session. Here's Sean Williams ripping the top side up on that outside wall. It's so important that first lap out to run the wall, Eric. It lengthens the amount of track that you are covering that first lap. It helps the motor get spooled up. Even just if you were to run the top side of the straightaways and arc into the corners and then arc back out to the wall, even that would help so much just to help the engine spool up. And then this second lap, it's going to be very, very important. You've got to hold a pretty wheel in the corners, and you've got to be very easy on the transition into and out of the banking so as to not turn too much. That's what's going to make a difference here on who gets pole and who, well, starts last. Sean Williams goes quick time at first, then Cole Freilich. How about that? But these are all the first laps. If anything, you almost want to go slower that first lap, it feels like, because you want to be up as close to the wall as possible. You still want to be carrying momentum, though.
Yeah, anytime that I would try to throw a friend into the sim to try to get some experience, I would put him in a solo lap at Daytona or Talladega, because from a distance it looks easy, but you just outlined some of the things that can go wrong and probably will for some of these competitors throughout this qualifying run. Catching the apron at all, as we are on board now at the number 74 of one of the most successful drivers in this series, and that of John Berry, to watch how smooth he's able to hug that double yellow line on the bottom of the racetrack. If you catch that just a little bit with a left side tire, you could pretty much throw any chance you have of starting up front out the window, and that's what these drivers are trying to avoid. Smooth, consistent, and on a razor-thin edge to try to set a quick time, and it looked as though Berry was going to go quickest, but now Sean Williams has the quick time by just 2 thousandths of a second. And Trey, we talk about how competitive this field is. Look how tight we are so far across the top 5 in this qualifying session with a minute and a half to go.
Yeah, it does show that while there's not a lot of places that you can necessarily gain time, hence why the margins are incredibly close, there are a lot of places in which you can lose time here at the Daytona International Speedway. And as you said, Eric, it is in itself in a lovely art form to be able to go out there and get a perfect qualifying lap at Daytona International Speedway. You were really hitting on what would be lap 2, which is ensuring that you're not getting or touching rather the apron oil whatsoever, because that's going to absolutely compromise your lap. And another way you can definitely compromise your lap is by tagging the outside of the wall on what you might consider your warm-up lap, despite the fact that you're actually taking a time lap on lap 1 of your 2-lap qualifying session. So all around, from the moment you leave the pit road, it is an absolutely crucial 2.5 minutes or so around the speedway, and we're coming to about 30 seconds left in the session for the likes of Daniel Folkingham, who is, I'm presuming, on his second lap to go out there and try to set the quick time tonight.
Yeah, this is lap number 2 here for the number 20 car. We'll see how he fares across the start-finish line. While we watch the last 20 seconds of qualifying here for the 20 car, let's talk about, well, quickly mention some of our partners here at Pit Stop TV. Tucson Sound Art. You can go to TucsonSoundArt.com to grab your wall-mounted sound art device today. Use promo code PitStopTV for 10% off when you do so. Of course, Race Pace Setups. You can use that Discord link at the bottom right to check out their Discord, where you can grab some of the best, if not the best, GT3 and other setups for you on iRacing. You'll pick up tons of time, I promise that. We also, of course, have to thank Permanent Makeup and Cryo in Maine. When it comes to your appearance, you deserve the best care that money can buy, and our official graphic and camera provider of Pit Stop TV, Whiplash Media at whiplash-media.com. Just like that, though, Eric, we are ready to open up Season 13 of NORC. Can I get a yeehaw out there just for that? We're going to go ahead and look down our starting grid. Sean Williams on pole. How about the fan favorite in the number 89 out of Wilmington, North Carolina, putting it on pole for Daytona, the first race of Season 13. John Barry out of Kentucky, he will start from the second position. Of course, Revan Lateralis. That's huge for Revan to start from the second position. Starting third, though, it's going to be Josh Robin in the number 8 car. Tommy Gossett, he'll be scored as the 80, but he is visually the 54. I think that'll be changed for Kansas next week. Row number 3 will have Howie Briss down low in the 97 car. Cole Freilich, how about that starting position for Cole? He will start from 6th place. Of course, that is our Daytona 500 pole sitter. Starting 7th position, Matt Hummel in the 93 car, making a return to the series. It's been a long time since I've seen that name, much less said it. Hayes Booth will start from the 8th position. We've had him on the channel recently. He's becoming a great commentator in and of himself. And starting in the back end of the top 10, we'll have none other than Daniel Falkingham, who we rode on board with there for a moment. And how about Jared Darling, Paisley Toast himself, starting from 10th.
Now we'll take you to the drivers who just missed out on the top 10 spot, like the number 69 of Sheldon Lockey, going to roll off in 11th. Outside, the number 28 of Cody Miller, going to line up in that 12th spot. 13th is where you're going to find Tyler Justice in the number 7. And how about Will Klein, a driver who we've seen up towards the front at Daytona many a times. Watch out for the outside of row 7. Car 48 and Klein's going to roll off in 14th spot. He will certainly be one to watch tonight. Aaron Smith in the 70 is going to roll off inside of row number 8 in the 15th spot. Outside is going to be that of Bobby Chaney in the 24. He too is going to try to work his way up towards the head of the pack relatively quickly. 17th starting position is where you're going to find Aray Ati in the number 23. Outside, David Shutt in car number 5 in 18th. And rounding out our first 10 rows of competitors tonight, the 2020 Daytona 500 winner Tyrell Baker in the 25, and Zoltan Herczeg, who is certainly going to be one of the most exciting drivers in the field, coming in that 20th spot in car 96.
And now we look to the final 5 rows. Tom Mercier will make up the inside of row 11 tonight, and he'll be accompanied by Spencer Owens, who takes the 22nd position. Behind those two, it's going to be Justin Gable and Elijah Gracia making up row 12 tonight. 25th and 26th positions, respectively, go to Scott Shire, Patrick Colby. Taylor Frey, Brendan Stringer will make up 27th and 28th positions tonight. And rounding out the field, 29 competitors tonight. On the 15th row, it's going to be Justin Ford, and that'll make up your field for this opening round of the 13th season of NORC.
The NORC iRacing Series finally ready to open up Season 13. This is certainly a different scene for me. This is really cool to be able to talk about all these guys come to the first green flag of the season, and I wouldn't do it with anybody else alongside me. Eric Brennan and Trey Shuttlesworth on the call with me. We do have Emerson Arden now on our social media coverage. So glad that he's here as well. This is going to be a fun one. Out of turn number 4, we're going to grab him really quickly if we can get a hold of the Terrell Baker. DCB, a little kind of impromptu. Give us that yeehaw.
13!
That'll work. That'll do. Terrell Baker starting off season number 13, as with any NORC season, will race into turns 1 and 2.
Boy, we're not even a lap into this thing, and I already love this series. And up at the front of the pack, you can see the draft coming into formation already. Josh Robin on the bottom trying to push your pole sitter clear out in front to the lead, leaving John Berry falling back to Tommy Gossett in the pit stop TV number 54, as Andrew mentioned, scored the 80. But there's company on that bottom lane, and right now it looks to be prevailing as they approach turn 3. In fact, all 4 cars that started on the inside are trying to get themselves clear out in front, while the top 2 are clear, led off of turn number 4 by Sean Williams, coming around a complete lap 1.
And just as I was about to say that John Berry continues to lead that storming outside line, it's going to be the second car on the inside line, Josh Robin, coming to the outside line, and he'll be the one to claim the first lap lead here in the 13th season of the NORC iRacing Series, and he's going to continue to lead on the outside line. Although as we go to the corner, Williams is going to get back even. I do expect that the 8 will have a massive run down the back straightaway, especially with how close the 74 of John Berry is.
Lap 2 of 100 underway down the Daytona super stretch, still side by side up front. Josh Robin leading that topside charge. He got up in front of John Berry, Tommy Gossett until Freilich up there, the 11 of Hayes Booth even. A lot of great drivers towards the front of this field. On the bottom side, you've got guys like Howie Briss, Matt Hummel, Jared Darling, and more. Sheldon Lockie even there. A lot of drivers starting to fall back as Williams going to move in front of the 97 of Briss. And no, Briss goes up high, and he... Wow, I don't know who led that lap.
It was certainly incredibly close as they came to the line. Howie Briss now working the outside. It looks as though the inside lane was going to be the preferred line, but the second car in line's been willing to jump up in front of that high lane, and Howie Briss has done just that. He clears Sean Williams, on board with Williams on the backstretch, and it looks as though the outside line still has some momentum. Here comes Robin up top with drafting help. He's going to slot down to the inside, and we'll see if the trend continues as the outside lane is now led by your outside pole sitter and John Berry as he hunts the lead in 3.
And what we're seeing already is what makes the Xfinity Series cars so brilliant on the super speedways. It seems like as if the leader never truly has control of a race here because the outside line remains very prevalent, rather. You don't also need a lot of cars on the outside line. Right now, we see less than a half a dozen, only 4 cars represented on the outside line. Yet lap after lap, we're seeing new drivers come up to claim the lead. This time around, it's going to be how... Oh, wait. I have to correct myself there. It's Josh Robin who leads the lap. This time by a little bit more of a margin than we saw at the completion of lap 2.
Bit of a different look this season for Terrell Baker. He sits at about the 10th position. 3 wide now. Here comes Justin Gabler on the outside with a big run. TCB going to go up there along with as John Berry pokes himself out into the race lead momentarily. Everybody just settling in, trying to figure out if they want to charge or wait. Tyler Justice in this group as well. A newcomer to the series making his first NORC start this evening. Side by side, they stay up front with Josh Robin down low. John Berry up top, and Robin leads that lap again. That is lap 4 of 100 in the books. Further back, some drivers starting to fall back, put themselves in a decent little position to just ride around and wait. We're looking at some of them here, a big gaggle of race cars. We got Zoltan Herczeg, Justin Ford, Scott Shire, and more.
Yeah, Herczeg was somebody who we thought would work their way up towards the front rather quickly, but we touched on the fact this is a 100-lap race on a super speedway at Daytona. Just as I say that, Herczeg's going to squirt to the middle and try to pick up a few more spots as we ride on board with him into turn 3. But you see the pack kind of funneling out here outside that top 15 or so. Have to wonder, Trey, if some of these guys are just kind of bide their time, especially how crazy and chaotic the racing is at the front of the pack. They're still double wide pretty much all the way throughout the top 10 and more. And some of these guys, Zoltan looks like he wants to get there in a hurry, but a lot of these drivers, including Will Klein, who Zoltan's going to go by on the outside, they appear pretty complacent to be riding this far back of that mess that's up ahead of them.
Yeah, all around, while it is early in the race, it is still a critical time of the race, as you know, every lap is in a super speedway race. But no, these guys are definitely in a little bit of a sketchy zone right now because they're definitely in a scenario where they might lose that slipstream from the main pack right now. Although as we go up to the front, we do see a lot of 3 wide action, and then that's when you'll start to see a pack begin to slow down. But optimally rather, if you're in the lead pack, you do want to be side by side in theory because it does mean that you'll go even quicker than single file here on iRacing.
Terrell Baker, to the point, leads lap number 6, the 25 car, leading the field at the Daytona International Speedway. Race number 1, and he gets led lap number 1. Josh Robin up underneath the 25 car. They're starting to work together. They've got Howie Briss in behind. Terrell just went up there, went 3 wide, and said, "Excuse me, I'll take that lap."
Yeah, right now Baker has been one of the most impressive to work his way from well outside of the top 10. As we look now at the back bumper, that's how effective the bump draft is for these cars on the back straightaway, right into the radiator of that number 8 car of Robin as they went off into turn number 3. But Baker has rocketed his way to the lead from outside the top 10 in just 7 laps. But Jared Darling now wants the top spot away. He's jumped up to the outside, got help from behind by Gable, and they're trying to keep this momentum rolling for the outside lane.
It's working out so far for Jared Darling. Gets up to the top side and takes the lead that time by Trey. This is, I mean, these are 200-mile-an-hour formation laps.
I think that's a pretty fair statement right now, because it doesn't seem like these drivers, despite how aggressive they are, a lot of the moves that they're making are incredibly calculated, and we're seeing a lot of it's just very reasonable so far driving, and it's exciting as well. So I think we're getting a pretty decent product for what is very early in a 250-mile race here at Daytona.
Coming around to complete lap number 8 of 100. Let's, of course, take a look at the weather real quick, see what these guys are contending with on the racetrack. 70 degrees in the air, 81 on the racetrack, and very calm winds. This is a pretty mild day here at Daytona. These are prime racing conditions, I'd say.
Yeah, and the wind, of course, Andrew, you pointed it out. That's the most critical thing for these drivers in these Xfinity cars. One thing you'll notice as far as the difference between these cars and the Cup cars is the rear spoiler. I don't think there's any other style of racing that is impacted more by the winds than these super speedway events with this style car. It could certainly make you feel like that you're glued to the racetrack, especially when you're double wide about 4 rows deep like we see out in front of Tommy Gossett's machine. But if there was a pretty significant head or tailwind on the front and back straightaway, these drivers would certainly feel it on the entrance to turn number 1 or turn 3. Fortunately, as of now, it doesn't appear to be a factor as Gossett looks outside at 3 wide.
And for a moment behind him, Brandon Stringer was looking to support him on the outside for a 3-wide attempt, but nothing will work on the outside line for the time being, just not the numbers for Tommy Gossett to go up on and try to make that outside line work. But yeah, we were talking about the the weather here tonight. The other thing I didn't realize coming in tonight is that we're also going to probably be seeing a day-to-night transition, which is going to greatly affect the track temperatures. In fact, in the sim right now, it is just shy of 6 o'clock in the evening or afternoon, if you will. And we're also seeing an acceleration time twice of what you would see in real life. So I think we're sure to see a full day-to-night transition here at Daytona.
Tyler Justice up to the top 4. He's giving a big shove to the outside line leader. That's Justin Gable trying to beat Darling to the line. Doesn't quite do it. Tyler Justice is an old name. He's been on Pit Stop TV many times before, just way back in 2017 and 2018. It's good to see the number 7 out here at the NORC iRacing Series, making his first start, already showing himself as somebody who wants to go up there, lead laps, and win races, as Terrell Baker going to move back up in front of Justin Gable and relegate Tyler Justice to the 3rd car in line. But that 7 car looking pretty good up on the high banks here at Daytona. Just kind of riding around, seeing what he can do up there, though, and trying to go to the front.
The level of commitment by some of the participants in that top line is rather impressive. Justice, Gossett, and Moore all seem married to that second lane. But I have to admit, though, Terrell Baker was really aggressive with the front bumper coming out of 4 1 lap ago into the backside of Jared Darling. He elected to bail out and try to take the lead back himself, and now they're kind of stuck double wide again, and that's going to pull the inside line back together with Sean Williams now the 3rd car in line in the black number 89. But seeing a lot of aggression by some of these front runners here, and already starting to research with how rough they could be as far as the bump draft, because that's going to play a factor as to who wins this race. But just like that, we're back together again, double wide, about 6 rows deep.
Yeah, and this is probably so far the most cars we've seen in the lead pack today. As you said, about 6 rows double wide at the moment. And we're starting to see some of the guys that are remaining prevalent throughout the running so far. I'm thinking of, as you said, Eric, TCB, since he's gotten to the front of the field, he's pretty consistently remained in the top 5. And I would have to say the same for Josh Robin. And with that, the leader on the inside line of Jared Darling, who is now the 2nd car on the inside line, has also been pretty prevalent so far in the running.
Watching the field now enter turns 1 and 2, you can see just how many cars we've got here at Daytona. 29 in total. They're all pretty well spread out. You're seeing even the guys in the front that had just kind of grouped up, they're starting to spread out. Hayes Booth falls back. Looks like Brandon Stringer in the group, just kind of hanging on. There's John Barry as well in the 74. Cole Freilich now in the mix. And Sean Williams, I noticed on this 89 car that he's got a little bit of right side damage. Not sure where this would have come from, but if we can get a nice another look at it. I noticed when we were on board with Tommy Gossett that he's just got some right side damage. I don't know if maybe he popped the fence or he popped another car in the left side. You just barely see it there. I have no clue where that would have happened to have not led to other incident, but Sean Williams with a little bit of damage early.
Yeah, that's something that we're definitely going to keep an eye on, and we did see him kind of fall back behind the number 8, just ahead of him of Josh Robin many a times. Not sure if that's trying to lay off the bumper as sideways off the corner. That was a great save by Jared Darling. We saw that car go way sideways on the exit of the corner. May have caught the apron that time. And he was still tucked right up, though, underneath the backside of TCB, and that's going to give momentum to the outside as Gable hunts the lead. He'll fall back in 3.
As we come through turn 4 to the completion of what will be lap 14, coming to lap 15. I was just about to say things were getting a little bit calm after the chaos on the back straightaway, but yet again, Jared Darling will be storming to the outside line. He'll be the man to lead that lap with a great push by a man who's been doing a lot of pushing on the outside line today so far. It's Justin Gable. In fact, the two of them nearly clear the entire inside line. Darling will be comfortably to the inside as we come down the back straightaway.
You can see as loose as these cars are, as on edge as they may be, boy, do they get big runs when you get in behind somebody. Certainly punching a nice big hole in the air and just allowing for some big runs to form. A lot of energy in this group. Josh Robin a bit squirrely into 3, I think, throwing the cars side by side. I'm not sure if maybe he was trying to kind of index the car, see if there was a little bit of damage somewhere. It kind of looked like that thing you do if you're just trying to find some damage somewhere in the suspension, trying to throw weight on each side of the car. Oh, his TCB gets a shot from Justin Gable. That shot him right down in front of Josh Robin. That made his move to the inside a whole lot easier. Even Jared Darling very sideways that time out of the tri-oval.
And as we're watching these drivers try to perfect their passing efforts, you're also going to start seeing a little bit more of what Jared Darling was trying to do there, and that is block the run. That's going to be a bit of a rehearsal throughout the remainder of this 100-lap event as well. Not only do you want to see when you can make your move, you also want to practice to try to stop your competition from being able to make a pass effectively, and that's what Darling attempted to do, which it shot Baker down almost across the infield grass. They remain 1 and 2, and right now the freight train leading up on the top side continues to be that of Justin Gable off 4, and he's still got help from what's been a very dedicated partner in the number 7 of Tyler Justice. They continue to run first and second in the outside line, but the bottom continues to prevail for the time being.
Yeah, and while teamwork can definitely something that can play into your favor to get into contention at a super speedway, I think what we're already starting to see that is that the nature of this race will eventually invoke a culture or an idea that it is truly every man for yourself out here. Just looking at the two that were battling to come to the start-finish line just a couple laps ago, and it looks like for the first time today, Justin Gable might have a chance to potentially storm to the race lead and the lead of the inside line, because he's been a driver who's been on the outside line for most of the 17 laps so far, I'd have to say.
Watching now from the nose of Josh Robin's machine, he sits 3rd on that bottom side, about 5th or 6th on the scoring pylon, though, just staying side by side, multiple rows deep, and not a whole lot else happening, truly. Further back, we have some cars kind of just stringing out, getting a field going, trying to figure out where everybody needs to be. This feels about par for the course, honestly, with an NORC race at Daytona. The field relatively all together. You can see, you know what, let's take the onboard here of Bobby Chaney at the very back of the line, and we can just watch everybody up front when they go off into turns 1 and 2. It's just, from that pack up front, it's just single file on the bottom side. Everybody just staying in line, and nobody wants to lose the draft, of course, although these guys back here, they just might. That was a little bit dangerous with Taylor Frey up the racetrack and Bobby Chaney lifting.
Yeah, but I got to admit, I like this position that Bobby Chaney is in right now, because he could see the leaders. He could see them up in front of him, which, speaking of, we got a new leader. Looks as though that outside line finally got some giddy up in it. And now is Justin Gable now parading the field on the bottom of the race. Turned.
And it is going to be a pretty massive wreck considering the size of the field. Looks like potentially up to 10 cars, might have been as little as a half a dozen. Definitely a few cars with critical damage to that is going to end their chances of a race win today, though, it looks like.
very, very early for this to happen. Not even lap 20 just yet, and we've got a pretty big incident in turns 1 and 2. Looks like maybe a very slightly bad bump from Jared Darling to, was that Jared? Yeah, that was Jared Darling in behind the 13 car of Justin Gable. And Gable, you mentioned to Eric, had just taken over the race lead, just got out there, and just a bad bump, catches his bumper and turns him.
And look at some of the cars involved. I mean, a big hit there for Cole Freilich. You saw there Tyrell Baker kind of spinning down to the bottom. I don't think he took a major impact. You see the 8 that was leading earlier in this race, and Josh Robin, he was in a lead pack pretty much all race long. However, considering where this wreck took place, I'm surprised, Trey, that we didn't see more cars involved. And for some of these guys riding in the back, it may have been a pretty good move on their part.
No, Eric, that was a point you brought up earlier, is the fact that a lot of guys were pretty well strung out. Well, it's something that both you and Andrew were talking about quite a bit so far today. It's just the fact that it gives them a lot of time to react. Some of these guys were probably 2 or 3 seconds back at the start of the accident, and that gives you so much time to get on the brakes. Unfortunately for Brandon Stringer, just won't have enough time to efficiently slow down, gets into the rear end of Cole Freilich, and he'll be among the many that are involved in the accident. But yeah, as you said, it could definitely play into your favor to hang back and just tail behind the lead pack 2 or 3 seconds. Gives you a lot of time to react, and you're still gaining the benefits of the lead draft.
Waiting on Bobby Cheney's picture to come back. We're doing this for a reason. We were just talking about Bobby Cheney being back and being able to watch if something happens up ahead. It might not show us. There we go. We're starting to get him back a little bit. He'll come back eventually. I want to see if he's caught up in this. As you can see, everybody spinning behind. Looks like we don't have Bobby Cheney's perspective, so I'll check with another driver that was back there. I'm very, very curious as to how this is going to work out for some of these guys that were in the back and just riding around.
Yeah, and oftentimes wreck avoidance is going to be tested here, as now we're on board with Arayati, who also was playing that bit of a strategy to lag back. And you can see just how far ahead the leaders are once that top running car went sideways, and he had enough time. Looks like he ran into the back of Daniel Falkingham, so that's a little misfortune there before Falkingham spun down to the bottom of the racetrack. It took some damage on the left rear. Ati, though, appeared to be able to keep going, so it wasn't all sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows there, Trey, for the guys in the back, but it was certainly better than some of the front runners and early leaders as far as when the carnage broke out in the middle of 1 and 2.
No, ultimately what that showed is that a wreck can happen anywhere, and sometimes being at the back gives you all the control to be able to avoid the accidents, which is what some of those drivers were able to do. Or maybe you weren't able to avoid the accident, but you were able to keep your damage to a minimum.
A lot of cars torn up in this one. We see some of the drivers that are exiting the pit lane and rejoining the pacing field. 2 drivers did stay out, and this confirms my suspicions about Bobby Cheney. Look at that clean number 24 car. No damage on that Ford Mustang. He stayed back of that one and had plenty of time to react. Sheldon Lockey stays out. He will assume the race lead. No stages here in the NORC iRacing Series. These guys aren't staying out to try and get stage points. They're just staying out, I think, to kind of see what everybody else does. And I'd imagine they just might come around a bit this time by. Of course, that lap lead going to help Sheldon Lockey, and that could be what Bobby Cheney was going for. They could also just be trying to make sure they sort out to the back end of this field once they pit this time.
And this is also going to provide us with a different cast of characters at the front, or at least a different order as far as drivers who are going to be at the head of this field once these waves of service and pit stops are finished up for these drivers. And I think that may change a little bit of the culture of this race, or at least one would hope so. We know that the agenda of pretty much the entire top 10 was get to the front, lead this race, figure out our best way to make moves, be aggressive. Let's rehearse how this race is actually going to unfold in the final few laps. Now we may end up with a couple of cars up towards the head of the pack that may be complacent to kind of log some laps and, you know, maybe break out a little bit ahead of some of the cars that are playing it conservatively. But with this package and this car, that is going to be extremely difficult to accomplish, even with the cooperation of, say, the top 5 or 6 cars.
Yeah, it just seems, based off of my personal experiences racing this car in official race sessions, or, you know, anytime I see leagues utilize this car, it just seems like naturally packs tend to form near the front of the field double wide with the Xfinity Series car. Of course, it's in theory faster for the lead guys to be able to go side by side at a super speedway like this, but I suspect that we'll, despite that, at least have a handful of drivers that are going to want to go out there and probably be aggressive and go for, you know, the lead essentially early in the race.
Lap 22 of 100, and it looks like pace car lights are shut off. They are extinguished. We are restarting this race this time by. You see some of the wounded race vehicles in the field. Cole Freilich, I think, the first of those, he has tons of damage on the bottom side. I'm very surprised, actually, that he's in the front of the field like this. It looks like he's just kind of mixed in. I'm not sure how Cole Freilich is up there. He's a lap down, but iRacing has things. There he goes. He's going to pit this time by. He must have, or stay out of the way or something. Regardless, we're going back green flag racing. Spencer Owens in control of the field. Howie Bress on his outside. Cole Freilich going to drop like a rock.
Yeah, Freilich doing the wise thing to just get on out of the way, and he's going to fall to the tail end of the pack while everybody continues on. A couple of cars still up in the top 10 with a little bit of damage potentially, specifically the backside of Robin's number 8 car, but the bottom lane is starting to work here as they come out of turns 1 and 2, and the field is staying very tightly bunched for the time being. Great opportunity for some drivers mid-pack to make up some ground as they're going to rocket their way down the back straightaway, still double wide throughout most of the top 10.
And it looks like drivers used that caution period to take a little bit of a breath, and it's right back to being aggressive to try to go for the race lead. Side by side for about 6, 7, 8 rows currently, and the battle for the lead, it's going to be between the rookie Hayes Booth and Spencer Owens, and coming to the start-finish line, Hayes Booth's going to be leading the lap here in Season 13, so the rookie gets the job done, and I love to see it for our Pit Stop TV comrade.
Absolutely. That's just about like seeing Yuki Tsunoda go up there and finish in the points at Bahrain. Hayes Booth with a lap lead. That's a bonus point as well. So how about the driver of the number 11? I want to say out of Mississippi, I believe. That's pretty big as Tom Mercier drops down onto the apron, and he will fall back to the back end of the pack. He had just gotten caught back up, got back on the lead lap, and after, I believe, missing the start of this race, but he is going to drop back out and better his chances, it looks like. Look at this number 8 car. We'll look at this from the nose cam here of the 28. As well, he actually moved back up in behind the outside line instead. But regardless, Josh Robin, a lot of damage on the back end of that race car. That's going to affect drivers getting up to him and trying to give him a push. We'll see how it works out for John Barry.
Yeah, and I think Cody Miller was reading your mind there, Andrew. It looks as though he saw how the back bumper of Robin's car was rearranged, and he wanted to bail out. He didn't want to be the next car in line, but have no fear, John Barry is here. He's going to lockstep with that number 8 ahead of him. They're going to work on the bottom side with that of Spencer Owen to kind of overtake the top 3 positions on the racetrack right now, but you can see Barry very reluctant to get up there and tap the backside of what spells Camaro, at least on the back bumper of that car, as they come through turn number 3.
Yeah, it looks like that damage definitely isn't stopping Josh Robin. It might hurt his, it might give him a little bit of deficiency in a straight line, but it's enough where he's still able to contend and hang with these guys. And now the driver who's leading the outside line is Howie Briss. It looks like Hayes Booth withdraws to the back end of the field, and just as I say that, Josh Robin in that slightly damaged Chevrolet Camaro is going to be the driver leading the outside line, and he will now challenge the blue emu machine of Spencer Owens.
Sean Williams got some damage. Zoltan Hertzeg, Terrell Baker, Daniel Falkingham. A lot of these drivers that have a little bit of damage from that first incident, they are hanging on to the back end of the top 10 now. In fact, Terrell Baker occupying that 10th position for the moment. And we can actually take a better look at this race car and see the back end of this car is very damaged. Jared Darling has no back end to his race car, but he is still working with that 25 car. How about the 54 something to the top side? Tommy Gossett making something happen.
Yeah, Gossett trying to work that third lane if he can, outside of another car that was involved in the crash in 1 and 2. And Daniel Falkingham, who spun sideways. And it looks as though that Josh Robin's in danger of getting shuffled out. No, in fact, the field's going to go the other way that time. Robin's going to keep the help. It's going to be Howie Briss who gets kicked up to lane number 3 to the outside wall. That'll shuffle him back, and that's going to pull Gossett and company right up to this lead group. And the pack is now starting to multiply as far as the number of cars running in contention with the lead draft. Gossett down to the bottom, about 5th, 6th car in line on the inside. But right now, Robin is really starting to struggle there with that damage while the leaders start to try and break out in front. And here comes that 7 back up into the picture. Driver we talked about earlier, Trey, and Tyler Justice. He's 3rd in line on the bottom. Make that 2nd in line on the inside as Berry goes for the lead.
Yeah, Justice has been a driver so far today that's been quiet but fairly consistent, and that can be a good thing at the super speedways, just to mind your business. Despite the fact that he's running near the front right now, the other advantage that he has right now is that he's on the inside line, and conventionally, when accidents occur, you get a little bit more visibility and a little bit more chance to evade on the inside line, but of course that's always scenario dependent. We go down the back straightaway. John Barry is the man leading, but now it's yet again Josh Robin. He'll have a little bit of a push from the 28 car of Cody Miller. Right now, they are going to fade in the corners, but I expect they'll have a bit more momentum down the front straightaway.
So Spencer Owens staying tucked in behind John Barry for now, leading the bottom side charge with Tyler Justice, and they gain a little bit of ground on that top side. A lot of disorganization up there as you see the number 4 of Spencer Owens. He's the number 4 visually, but is scored as the number 12. It's been his longtime number here in the NORC iRacing series. I think the paint scheme just not quite matching this evening, but he is running second place in behind John Barry. And, hey, this is just that time where these guys can ride around a little bit. This is still just trying to get to the end of the race. Nobody can even think about setting up for the win right now. You've got to just make laps.
Yeah, logging laps must be the agenda, but judging by the way in which some of these cars are handling, it looks as though these drivers are pushing it relatively hard in the top 10 as we now jump on board here with a car that has worked his way up through the pack after starting well outside the top 10 in Zoltan Herczeg. And he's a name who we've watched come through the front of the field multiple times already at Daytona. We saw it earlier in some of the NORC Classic highlights that we had for you. He is someone who loves this style of racing. He's successful in a number of ways. He's the reigning NORC champion, and he's right now just biding his time, not getting too aggressive with the back bumper at Daniel Falkingham, and he is currently up into the 8th spot and just kind of waiting for things to kind of fall back his way. All maybe going according to plan for Herczeg, who, as you can see, started 20th, now running in the 8th spot and staying pretty committed to this outside lane for the time being.
And that could very well work in his favor. Currently looking at the lead pack of about 8 or 9 cars, there's only 3 cars in the outside line. He's the 3rd car in the outside line, so if this outside starts to garner a little bit more momentum, he's in a right position to gain a lot of spots at a pretty quick rate of time, or rather in a very quick period of time. But yeah, it's about 3 or 4 cars single file right now. Josh Robin, the first car on the outside line, and now he's going to start to get even with 3rd place Tyler Justice. So while the leaders had a little bit of a breather, I think that's just about over.
This front field kind of forming up. We're seeing these guys are just starting to race, and this honestly looks like a bit more of one of those groups that you might see that falls to the back end of a field where they just sit back and behind. They stay side by side so they can kind of break through the air as a group, but they don't really race too much, as Justice might have barely given a shot to the side of the 8 car of Josh Robb. Now he'll move in behind Spencer Owens as John Barry leaves that 4 car on the bottom side and will go up and take that push right back to the lead. John Barry leading at Daytona, lap 31 now complete of 100. About 1/3 of the way into this one, Eric, and we still have not seen exactly, I think, who is going to win this race just yet. I don't think the winner is going to come out of this top 10 just yet, I'm going to be honest.
No, we've already had one big wreck. We may expect at least 1 or perhaps 2 more before things come out. And we also expect things to get pretty wild when they come down for the checkered flag. But, I mean, look at how some of these cars that are running up towards the front, as you saw Miller get a little bit dodgy there on the inside of Howie Brisk. But, I mean, look at all these cars. They're beaten, they're battered, they're bruised. It looks like they just finished up a 250-lap event on the Bristol Dirt. But they're actually 32 laps into this event here at Daytona. Still a long way to go. And everybody's accordioning back together. The outside line seems to be the preferred line to get the pass made to get up front, but I'm surprised that we've seen so many drivers, once they have the pass made, drop down to the inside, pick up the bottom lane, and then the process just seems to rinse and repeat, as right now it's Josh Robin and Daniel Falkingham trying to make the top side work. There's lap traffic ahead as they come out of 2. It's going to get tight.
Yeah, the field is going to overtake the likes of Bobby Cheney and Elijah Gracia off pace after that earlier incident. But no, what you said, Eric, is definitely pretty valid. Because oftentimes, if you're the lead car on the outside line, you do have quite a bit of control in the race. You can really maintain the pace and maintain your relative positive track position on the racetrack. Because oftentimes, as you see lap after lap, a driver on the outside line peek down to the inside line. If you can't get back up into the outside line, you're just going to fade farther and farther back on the inside line. It could become a bit of an entrapment.
A little bit of battling right there. Trying to get down to the bottom side was Josh Robin. He has to stay up high, and now Cody Miller going to fill that space as Justice had forced Robin to stay high. These guys getting single file, and they need to as they pick up Bobby Cheney going by on the top side. Well, the field goes around the top side. Oh, Cody Miller hits him. Are you kidding me? Oh, my gosh.
And that contact is going to spin down to the bottom, a car which we've highlighted multiple times tonight. And Bobby Chaney, after he was able to avoid contact earlier on tonight, while running in the middle of the pack, and he appeared to be a bit of an innocent victim there at that point on the back straightaway. And just we were talking about how aggressive things were being. Chaney, who was staying down to the low side, out of the way at the exit of turn number 2. Miller went up top, and I don't think he was quite clear, as you can see. And look at Chaney, locked that car down, did not make significant contact with the inside retaining wall, and the driver who came up one spot short of picking up a bonus point under the caution that we had the first time through after staying out to try to lead a lap, ends up spinning down the back straightaway and puts himself further behind the 8 ball on today's competition.
We'll get an additional perspective riding on board with Cody Miller just to see what happened. Looks like the 24 does come out the racetrack just a little bit. And yeah, I do think there was a legitimate contact. Don't think that was a case of netcode. And the other unfortunate thing there for the driver of the 24 is the fact that he would have been in the lucky dog position, or the free pass position, if you will, if we got a caution flag. But now that's going to go to Elijah Gracier for the time being.
Well, this is shaking things up quite a bit as we now are back double file through the top 10. Daniel Falkingham suddenly challenging on the top side. They fall back a little bit now through turns 1 and 2. Zoltan Herzeg in this group, and Herzeg is our most recent NORC champion as well. This is a whole lot different, though, from those 87 cars, and he's finding that out pretty quickly. But you know what? I think when we get to the meat and potatoes of this schedule, get to some 1.5s, get to some intermediates, I think that's going to change. I think these cars will be a little bit more similar in that they're going to feel a bit more analog, whereas these NASCAR Cup cars we had for the Daytona 500, they've got a lot of downforce packed on, of course. That is the package now. They've toned the motors back a little bit. They feel like they are built almost to race like Indy cars, just 50 miles an hour slower sometimes. These NASCAR Xfinity cars, they're a whole lot more analog. They're a lot closer to what those 87 cars were at the time. You actually feel the race car. You feel the racetrack, a lot less downforce. That said, the side of the cars are still slabs that will hold you with a little bit of yaw through the corners.
Yeah, and that difference is a great point to bring up as Falkingham gets a big push now up towards the front of the pack. That point, though, that you bring up, and also the fact that there is a bit of a handling characteristic or handling change as the run goes on, and that's something for these drivers to consider, is the bump that you may have made a couple of laps to the driver in front of you after the pit stops, it may work initially, but as we get further in this run, I thought Falkingham was going to try to squeeze down in there third in line, and just as we say that, Owens is going to jump right back up top to go for the lead. But the fact that you can be super aggressive after coming off the pit lane is something these drivers have to keep in mind, because you're not going to have that level of control or stability all throughout the run. And we're starting to log numerous laps here since we got this race restarted, and you're starting to see some of these guys slip and slide even on their own without contact as we log more laps here.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're coming up on what would probably be about halfway into a fuel run. We pitted for fuel around laps 21 or 22, depending on which lap you came down onto the pit road under the yellow flag. And with about 30 to 35 laps for a full tank here at Daytona International Speedway, yeah, we're definitely getting to that number where that has to become a factor. And you will start to experience a little bit of tire wear. Not quite as much as we'll see when these guys go to the 2007 scan of Daytona International Speedway later in the season. But you're definitely right, Eric. You're going to have to take that into account over the course of a run as a driver here, especially in the daytime.
A big shot there from David Schutt to Zoltan Herzeg. I'd noticed this 5-car starting to roll up through the field, and we've seen David Schutt be so aggressive in, I think, every race so far in NORC's history. David Schutt starting to work himself into the top 10, and I'm sure he will get a little bit aggressive as this race goes on. He's now in about the 7th position, it looks like, in the number 5 car. Now on the outside, right behind Briz, gets Briz a little bit loose there in the corner. Thankfully, hangs on. Oh! David Schutt is the one that gets loose. What?
Schutt was the one who slid up the racetrack off of turn 4 and made significant contact with the right side of his number 5 to the outside retaining wall. And as you can see, suffered some damage there on the backside. And I'm going to credit you with that one there. That was the announcer's curse, Andrew. After that.
Oh, no. Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
As you can see, Schutt now dealing with the repercussions in that Toyota Supra and having to fall to the tail end of this Congo line. Going to slot in here behind Tyler Justice, who got shuffled out a few laps ago. Now the question is, how hard did he hit that wall, and will he be able to stay in contact with this lead group? There's Trey Shuttlesworth. We're going to see exactly what happened here coming out of 4.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate scenario overall just to get this far into the race and have this become an issue. Still with a lot of laps left to go, of course. But yeah, cosmetically, it looks like Briss he's on the border of having enough damage to be able to stay with the lead pack or not be able to stay with the draft. Continuing to ride on board, coming out of turn 4. Watching the wheel, we do see looks like, it's hard to tell if there was contact, but definitely a lot of change in the wheel input coming off of the exit of turn 4 for Howie Briss.
No, this is for David Shutt here. This is...
Oh, my apologies there.
I'm still mind blown as to what happens. David Shutt just gets loose. Jared Darling isn't even close. I don't understand what could have gone wrong right there.
I mean, we could make ourselves sound like geniuses in the fact that we were talking about the handling starting to go away on these cars, and a couple laps later, it did look like there was some existing damage on the back of that car, so that may have created a bit of a roll as to that car getting that loose off the corner, but certainly bizarre big crash in the tri-oval.
And the bad brakes continue to come for Shutt, and he's not going to be the only one. It looks like at least a half a dozen cars and a lot of heavy hits, a lot more drivers, which are probably going to have to end their nights as a result.
You know what? That would not have included David Shutt if not for what just happened a couple of laps ago. That is huge for the driver of the 5. Now, I'm not sure where this is initially going to start. We'll kind of take a look a little bit further forward in the field. This is a very interesting one. I don't know what just happened. I don't know if this is up with the leaders. We kind of just caught the back end of things. And into the tri-oval. It happens further behind. Oh, it's going to be Brandon Stringer.
I believe you're right. That might have been Stringer, who, yeah, and indeed it was. He was involved, remember, in the first wreck. Not too much major damage in the first crash in 1 and 2. Got into the back of Daniel Falkingham, despite riding towards the rear of the field. Now we're going to go on board with Stringer and kind of see what happened here. Looks like that's Scott Shire just ahead of him. You see TCB with an abrupt move to the outside, and Stringer comes here through this 18-degree tri-oval, and he just got right hooked. I don't know who got him, but wow, he just got hooked head-on into the wall across the bow of the number 5 of David Shutt. Trey, there might be more to this story.
I believe Shutt might have been the car tailing him. We'll get a better perspective just to get a little bit of the bigger picture of what occurred here. Looking from the sky at this point in time, yeah, we did see that Stringer was the first car to go into the outside safer barrier, coming through the tri-oval here.
So I just kind of got the preview of what was going on and just saw as the runs were forming. Unfortunately, the grandstands blocked it there for us, but it looks like David Shutt is actually going to have a run up to Matt Hummel. We'll see it right here. The very bright blue 5-car gets a run to the red 93 and then just absolutely hooks him, and there's nowhere for Hummel, Shutt, anybody back here to go. And I think this also involves Tyler Justice.
Yeah, we were just talking about Justice also being one of the drivers who got shuffled out of line. And he was running up towards the front of the pack throughout the majority of this race, at least up to this point. It was the majority of this race. And, I mean, you guys kind of touched on it. And Trey and Andrew, if these guys would have been able to stay up towards the front of the field, here comes the hit from Shutt right to the back of Hummel, and then catches the 61. And then Justice gets speared either by the 5 or the car that came off the wall in what was the number 61 as he got off into the fence. And that's just a very unfortunate turn of events here for some of the drivers who showed speed tonight, happened to get shuffled out a few laps before this wreck took place, and it's now jumbled up this race a few laps shy of halfway.
Yeah, and we're starting to see a little bit of a trend here. We're seeing guys get about halfway into a fuel run. It was about 20 laps since we went green flag racing. And this is the second consecutive time it occurred, and then we have an accident. So I have to wonder if that's going to continue at this rate of time. We'll see a couple more cautions here. But the other thing we do have to take into account, though, is that the field is continuing to dwindle. Do have to note, though, an impressive amount of lead changes so far. Only 44 laps, maybe slightly less than 40 that were green flag, and we've already had 19 lead changes.
We're not going to hit that record number from the NORC Daytona 500, but we are going to get relatively high, it looks like. I also want to mention, we love interacting with you guys in the YouTube chat, especially. Eric, you called me out for jinxing, commentator cursing, that number 5 of David Shutt. Right before that all happened, we did have a commenter, I believe by the name of Dayitch. That's kind of what the name looks like anyways, Deaitch. I'm going to call him out. I'm going to put the evil on him because he had just said that he was digging that Tar Heels blue Jordan car, and that was Brandon Stringer.
All right, fair enough. I will put you off the hook there, and we will now place that commentator's curse or commenting curse on that use that you just mentioned. And that's one of the things I love about this series. There's a lot of momentum behind it, a lot of support behind it, a lot of eyeballs behind it. And I think I speak on behalf of all four of us who are on the production crew here tonight that this has been a blast. I mean, sometimes you sign on with some of these leagues that we cover here, and they come to Daytona, and it's just all-out wreckfest all night long. These guys, as you saw earlier, only had 2 cautions. The racing has been phenomenal all throughout. And there's a lot of energy behind this series, and it makes it a lot of fun, allows us to have a lot of fun with it. And the good news is we're not even halfway through this event. And Trey, we still looks like we're about a half lap away from this restart. And Andrew said this after the last restart. I'm going to say it after this one. I haven't a clue who may end up winning this race. I'm not even going to pick a favorite just yet. And you can call me out for that, not being willing to commit to something, but that's just how I feel. And I'm sure you would agree with me on that one, maybe.
No, that's the thing, because any driver that I would put money on, I wouldn't feel incredibly confident in, just because there's so much unpredictability and there's so many factors that you have to take into account with super speedway racing, especially with the B car. We've seen it be so conducive for side-by-side racing here. Drivers have the opportunity to be incredibly aggressive with the bumper, and that's also where things can go incredibly awry, as we saw with the last caution flag. So basically, yeah, no idea who's going to win this race. We'll get a better idea of who can win the race as we see more potential incidents.
We'll come around to take the green flag this time by. It'll be lap 45 coming to lap 46. When we go back green flag race, you can see how few cars are up on the top side. This lead pack, this field is dwindling. Across the stripe, though, the 69 and 11 leads to the green flag. That's Sheldon Lockie down low. Hayes Booth up top, and Hayes has a hell of a run to turn 1. Very wide.
And now looking down to the inside, one of the most aggressive cars in the field today, that number 8, despite the damage to the back end. Here comes Josh Robin on the bottom, and he's got help from John Berry. That's going to shuffle Hayes Booth out of the top 5 and more. Now getting kicked up to that 3rd lane is the driver who led us back to the restart, the 69 of Sheldon Lockie, while Robin, Berry, and Owens put themselves back up in the top 3 spots as they enter 3.
So we're seeing really a return of the drivers who were strong a little bit earlier. It's Josh Robin, who's remained prevalent for most of the day. John Berry, who is really prevalent in the second run. And we also have Spencer Owens, who's been pretty consistently up front. And the likes of Hayes Booth and Sheldon Lockie quickly returned to the rear of the pack. Of course, that might have been by design, though, for those drivers once they saw that they were in a scenario that was a little bit sketchy. We head into turn 1, already completed 1 lap into this run. John Berry, the driver leading the outside line, he's currently one leading the field.
What a wild restart. We see everything that just happened in the last 5-10 laps of that caution period completely reversed, completely erased, and it's the same guys out front. So you know what? This might be the group that we have to pick some drivers out of as far as who's going to win. The move down low for Berry is going to check up the field. Are we going to save it, boys?
So far, so good.
Oh, my!
Everybody's trying to hang on to it. What a job by the whole pack. After Robin got sideways there in 3 while running up towards the head of the field, that was amazing that it wasn't our next multi-car crash in 3 and 4, and that's definitely going to separate the pack. Trey, how in the world did we get away with this one?
I think we're going to have to let the visuals speak for themselves. We see the contact there between Tyrell Baker and Josh Robbins. An incredible save by the A, and everyone behind him has immaculate, really, just truly remarkable ability to get on the brakes or just get out of the throttle and give the driver ahead of them a little bit of time to also get out of it. Just good job all around on the inside line.
And this field is very spread out now. You see the top 6 cars or so, and it's just spread from then. It looks a bit like the Nevada desert. Everybody just very spread out as Terrell Baker back out in front of the field leads lap 48. And we can see just how far back we've got to go for the next big group of race cars. In fact, it looks like it's all the way back here for about 12th position on back. They're starting to get formed up. Even back here, not a big group of race cars. Everybody very thinned out by that incident a couple of laps ago.
Yeah, and Andrew, if they want to get back up there, they're going to have to work together. But I want to harpen back to something you mentioned just before the save of the century happened in turn 3 by this whole field. And that is the fact that this group here, this may be who we're going to hone in on as far as potential winners in this race. And there are a couple of reasons why. We'll start, though, with the fact that John Barry has just taken the lead away from Terrell Baker. Remember, Baker, along with the car that is fourth in line on the inside, that would be Jared Darling. They were kind of the class of the field in the first 20-lap run of this race, got caught up in the multi-car crash earlier on in the night after Justin Gable got turned sideways in front of the pack. And despite some obvious damage, those two have worked very well together, and they found themselves up towards the front of the pack, and their aggression appears to be paying dividends as far as keeping them in contention. But there's a lot of other names in this mix, including that Josh Robin, who had that miraculous save and is now second to the outside line, trying to push Cody Miller to the point.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable that these guys are still in it, because we're seeing some of the race's most aggressive drivers being able to survive the accidents. Maybe not get away, completely clean, but they're able to utilize their abilities to avoid the worst of the accidents. And they're still in contention. It's just going to show that we have, pretty decent drivers here in the NORC iRacing series across the board, consistently.
Lap 50 in the books, lap 51 underway. One half done, one half to go. Cody Miller leading the way on the top side. John Barry inside in second place. Josh Robin third on the top side. And that maybe got the 28 a little bit squirrely down the backstretch. Josh Robin, he's doing something you've got to be very careful of. He is bumper hunting down the backstretch, and he's following as opposed to just kind of waiting for the right opportunity to push. If you start hunting the bumper of the car in front of you, you eventually are not going to line up bumpers, and you will crash that car.
And equally as dangerous on the bottom side, Terrell Baker doing the same to John Barry. So the level of aggression amongst these first two rows of cars definitely starting to intensify here. And as I mentioned, just 3 laps ago, Josh Robin saw Elvis in 3 and 4 and has bounced back from that to now push clear to the lead. The number 28 car just ahead of him, a Miller, and we're going to rinse and repeat. This is what we've been seeing all night. That outside lane gets enough of a push and enough momentum to propel the leading car clear of the bottom lane. They slot down to the inside, and that's what Spencer Owens is going to try to do as he is up on the outside in car 4. Falkingham trying to follow, but Berry is going to keep Miller in contention for the lead for now, as it looks as though Baker is starting to lose touch on the inside.
Yeah, what we've learned in the first half of the race is that absolutely nothing is certain, and we have an absolutely great package of car and track, and it's made for an exciting 125 miles so far. The other thing that was really interesting to notice is that we had a driver set a purple lap time, quickest lap time of the day, last time by. It was for, need to look at timing and scoring. Oh, it was Bobby Chaney, currently running in the 13th position, and that just goes to show how the slipstream can be incredibly effective.
And there is Bobby Chaney in the 24 car as they pass a slow Cole Freilich on the inside. And Terrell Baker's down there. He's got to get back up the racetrack, and he does finally get back in line amongst the field. I was just looking at some stats real quick. There are only 6 drivers that started this race that have a previous race win at Daytona in the NORC iRacing Series. One of those, so that would actually give you great odds of having a new Daytona winner at the very least, if not new race winner this evening. Yet one of those, John Barry. Another, I believe I got to look for it again to confirm. I believe Josh Robin, no. Josh Robin is not on that list yet. Josh Robin could finally get that plate win. He's had a couple of Nortona wins, but he has not won a points-paying race yet.
Maybe that's a little bit of information behind the motivation that we've seen out of him today, as we're on board with him now on the back straightaway, trying to lead that outside lane to success, which has pretty much been the tail of the tape here all night long. However, he's starting to lose ground there to the inside, as John Barry has proven to be a good soldier to that of Cody Miller. They now have broken ahead of the pack, and now Barry's going to be the one to jump up top. And keep in mind, he's got some damage to the right rear of that car. These pushes may not be the most cleanest that he could have received all night long. After he was involved in one of the accidents, there's contact.
And we're crashing in turns 1 and 2. It's a lot of cars.
It looks like we don't settle into the long run. So after that incredible save by Robin and company, unfortunately, we're going to get our 3rd caution flag of the night. And the field's just going to continue to dwindle. There's really not going to be a lot of clean cars left after this one.
No, this is starting to look like some of the Daytona 500s recently, where most of the field gets pretty torn up and we're left with a thinning field by the end of the race. This is going all the way back to the tri-oval. We'll see all of this set up. As Bobby Chaney had entered all of this mess, he is then included in this mess in turns 1 and 2. Josh Robin just got John Barry loose. Spencer Owens went around behind. It's like the entire top side just completely lost composure all at the same time.
Yeah, throughout most of that replay, it looked as though Chaney may have gotten away with it, at least for the time being, at that portion of what we saw. Daniel Falkingham involved in his second crash of the night. We also saw the number 93 there, and Matt Hummel trying to slide his way by. But we were talking about the damage on the back end of John Berry's car and how Robin was going to have to be a little bit careful with where he was going to push and shove. And this happened coming down into turn number 1. And as you're going to see here in just a moment, he got on the wrong side of that back bumper and hooked him. And boy, Berry almost caught it the first time, but then it went into that little bit of a hospital hobble, and he could not reel it back in the second time. And that's when the field started to pile in. And Spencer Owen, who led a number of laps in this race, also went around. The rest of the field was able to slide their way by. Biggest hit may have been that of Berry, who bounced off the wall and then got hit from behind by, I believe that was Zoltan Herczeg, who nailed him in the rear end. Falkingham spun down to avoid, and it looks as though a lot of the field did a pretty good job navigating their way by this. So I'll call it a 4, maybe 5-car crash as we see Tyler Justice squeaking through, but that could have been much worse as far as impacts and damage. And a lot of guys did a great job to get through there and not making that a much bigger heaping, smoking pile at the end of it, as we see most of the field now on pit road.
And you do start to see the effects of having 3 accidents. None of them really, I think you would consider necessarily a big one as you might conventionally see it. Just a lot of mid-size accidents as we just saw. Like you said, Eric, about 4 or 5 cars in that last one. The most we might have seen in an accident might have been 8 or 10 cars. Start to see the likes of, okay, it's going to be Howie Brisk coming off of the pit road. He's going to be, I believe, the first driver off of the pit lane, but Tom Mercier stays out, and he's going to be the driver leading the field for the time being.
You said Bobby Chaney might be okay. I'm going to have to disagree, Eric. That 24 is very torn up on the right side of that race car. Now, we're getting to the point where everybody's going to have a whole lot of damage, but this is a lot for Bobby Chaney to have to overcome in this one. One driver stays out under this caution period, Tom Mercier, going to sneak into the race lead at least momentarily, and he is not pitted in just 3 laps, so he may have just pitted when this caution flag came out. Boy, wouldn't that be convenient if that's the case. 3 laps, that feels like he had to have pitted right as the yellow was coming out. That is very, very interesting there for Tom Mercier.
Yeah, that could end up. I mean, granted, we got a long way to go, and a lot could still happen. But if Mercier is able to be up and in contention early on in this race, remember, he bailed out of the lead pack at one point in tonight's race. But if he's able to keep himself up there, this is going to go down as perhaps one of the best accidents that he would have in a good way, as far as being able to cycle his way up towards the front. And in fact, let's now take an opportunity to talk to Josh Robin, who is battling for the lead up at the point of this race. And Josh, I'll tell you what, man, you guys have had so much speed, but it's been pretty aggressive there all throughout the night. How's the race unfolding for you so far? And is that what you have to do to get the job done? Do you have to be a little bit aggressive with the front bumper in order to make some progress in getting up through this field?
Yeah, I'd say you have to be aggressive. First of all, I didn't mean to wreck John Berry there. I just hooked him a little bit. But, yeah, the race has been pretty good. I've gotten a few incidents here and there, some damage on my back bumper, my right side. But so far it's been pretty good. Stayed up in the top 5, top 10 all race.
Yeah, that car and the driver have shown a lot of speed here, but you mentioned there were a couple incidents you were involved in. There was one that you were involved in that did not draw the yellow. That save in 3 and 4 was out of this world, incredible from our perspective. What was it like from the cockpit of that virtual race car? How busy were you with the hands on the steering wheel trying to hang on to that thing?
Really not that much. Honestly, here at Daytona and Talladega, you just let the apron kind of save you. If you try to crank it to the right and the apron catches you, you're just going to go right into the wall. So basically just hold the wheel a little bit straight. I mean, just got to work it a little bit, but that apron will help a lot. So, but yeah, I'm just, pretty good out there. I love these plate tracks. It's my kind of thing. So I'll be back up there pretty soon.
Well, it looks as though we may be getting set to go back racing. You put on a heck of a show here tonight. We can expect more of the same from you in these final 40-plus laps. Best of luck the rest of the way, Josh. We'll be watching.
All right, thank you.
Again, that is Josh Robin, who has been in a number of highlights here throughout the night. And you heard he took responsibility for the incident that put us under this caution that we're about to wrap up as we are getting set for another restart, Andrew.
Lap 58 coming to a close. We'll restart with the beginning of lap 59. Tom Mercier in front of the field. Green flag is out. Green flag signal from our starter. We're back racing at the Daytona International Speedway. Howie Brisk down to the bottom side in front of Cody Miller. Hayes Booth now leading the top.
Booth now trying to work the top side of the racetrack. Remember, he led a lap in this race earlier, and he's somebody who's trying to get his name up on the winner's list at Daytona in NORC competition. But unfortunately, that lack of experience is going to shuffle him up to the top side of the racetrack. He's going to get booted to the bottom portion of the running order. We got cars on the apron trying to make some moves in the back straightaway.
Looks like Patrick Colby's going to be a driver who's actually going to utilize that space below the double yellow lines to drop a little bit farther back into the field. Might have also been the same strategy employed by Hayes Booth. A little bit difficult to tell. Driver catches the apron. I'm not sure who it was in particular. They're able to save it. Things are fairly calm and orderly for the time being. A little bit of 3 wide around that 10th position, but looking to the outside line right now. Not with too much assistance right now. I believe it's Mercier.
Howie Brisk leading the way. Now he's having to defend from Terrell Baker. TCB to the outside of the 97 is going to take that outside line for himself as Tom gets the heck out of Dodge. He's going to drop back and get out of that front group. Howie Brisk leading the way. Some big moves the last couple of laps from Jared Darling and TCB. That was very scary the last time. And to turn number 3 now. Terrell Baker leading the top side to 1. 3-rounder.
Baker's got a lot of help from a driver who led at the time of the caution in Cody Miller, trying to push that mangled back bumper of TCB's car towards the head of the pack. But Howie Brisk, with the help from behind by Jared Darling, will propel himself back out in front of the pack as we come to 40 laps to go in this race. The runs have been massive. The level of aggression way up there. And we're not done yet. In fact, we're not even close to pay dirt just yet as the top 5 starts to break free. Miller and TCB falling back. And how about Josh Robin back up into the top 3? We just talked to him, and he has clearly got what it takes to put himself in the right position. Can he keep his nose clean? I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Josh Robin may be the car to beat here tonight, judging by his ability to get to the front of the pack, to push, and to stay there. He's running 5th.
Yeah, ultimately, if you were to have a data that gave you the information on how often drivers were in the top 5 tonight, or percentage of laps in which a driver was in the top 5, the only driver that might beat him might be the likes of potentially Jared Darling or TCB, because otherwise, Robin's been a driver who's been getting a lot of airtime on our end. He's been, fairly aggressive, very calm and orderly at other times, but he's, in the least, he's shown a driver who has the potential to go out there and get that win. And as you said a little bit earlier, Andrew, a driver who's yet to claim a points-paying win here at Daytona International Speedway, and I'm sure would mean so much to start the season with a victory for him.
It would mean a lot to everybody in this field to get a victory. I was talking about it earlier, several drivers have never won in this series before at all, let alone at Daytona. Only 6 drivers in this field have won here in NORC competition. One of those is Cody Miller. One of those is John Barry. We also had Sean Williams, I believe, on that list. Jared Darling. Only a few select drivers have won here in league competition. Well, Klein is one of those. It's going to take a lot for one of these guys to go out there and win this race. There are some of the same favorites that are just showing themselves in this race. We've talked about Cody Miller. We've talked about John Barry. John Barry now looks like he might be out. So the field is certainly starting to win that tug of war, but it just seems like exponentially as you go up that win list, it seems like it gets tougher and tougher to beat them. It's crazy.
Ooh, a little bit of contact there to Darling off the front bumper of Terrell Baker as they enter turn number 3. That's going to kick Darling up the racetrack. And yeah, a lot of motivation for this entire field. And one thing that I'm starting to notice is the way in which these cars are handling. And Trey Shuttlesworth talked about it earlier, the changing track conditions. You can see the sun is now set behind the virtual grandstands at the Daytona International Speedway. The track is going to start to cool. The handling conditions are going to change. These are all things you could practice for. What these drivers rarely practice is what these cars handle like when they have sustained a lot of damage. A lot of cars have been involved in incidents and crashes tonight, many sustaining damage to the back bumper or having missing rear bumper covers entirely. That's going to change the way in which these cars drive in these tight packs. There is no way anybody has rehearsed this, learning this all on the fly, and we're going to watch the level of aggression and intensity continue to ratchet.
Looks like we're having connection issues there with Eric, but the field continuing on now. Lap 64 of 100. Howie Briss leading the way. Now it looks like maybe... Eric, do we have you?
I think I'm here, but we'll try it again. Howie Briss still at the head of the pack. I was making a...
Getting it tough to hear him again, but Trey, this field is starting to find themselves in this midfield stride, this mid-race stride. We're still working on Eric. We'll let him sort that out, but in the meantime, you can see everybody starting to pack right back together, coming up to the 2/3 mark in this race. Now to the far side of 40 laps to go, and Trey, this is where that pit window suddenly opens up, and we could see some drivers, we could see some pairings come in early, expecting a green flag run. I think that would be unwise.
I agree, Andrew. As much as I'm a fan of the undercuts at the super speedways, it's the kind of thing we see stage racing kind of entice drivers to do sometimes. You would just need so many drivers to go down there with you to make it a safe-ish strategy, and really it's a strategy with a lot of risk involved because you just need that many drivers involved with you. There's the chance that the pit goes awry, and then you lose the draft. There's just a lot of things that are really working against you in that scenario.
Lap 66 now of 100. This will mark 2/3 of the way through this race. Side by side, Chevrolet Camaro is battling at the front of the field once more. It's Howie Briss down low, TCB up top. The top side is accordioning on itself. They're falling back. Very odd organization in the front of this field. Josh Robin now is going to look high, maybe, as they come up on this lap car. I think that's why they're starting to string out. David Shutt on the bottom side. They barely get through. How about this 7 in position number 7 momentarily? Tyler Justice is somehow still in this race.
Justice doing all that he can to keep himself in the battle. We'll try this for a third time. Hopefully the mic keeps working here. But Justice, despite the problems, remember we gave him a hard time earlier for being at the back of the pack and getting swept up in a wreck after getting shuffled out of the draft. He's up there running in top 10 contention. Now trying to work the inside that we've oftentimes see come in a proper formation and dismantle time and time again. But that is where Josh Robin now rides and tries to take the lead away, with Howie Britt still fighting heavy up top.
And we are really starting to get an idea of the players who are going to make their presence known later in the race, as long as they're able to maintain the track position. We've been hitting on the points that the likes of Josh Robin and TCB have been really prevalent up front, but really, ultimately, any of the drivers in the top 10 or 11, I think you could put some money on and have a pretty good chance of walking away with winnings here in the season for NORC so far. Still, Josh Robin leads down the back straightaway, but as we conventionally see, the outside line gets a lot of momentum, and it's going to be Howie Briss leading down the Daytona Superstretch.
Briss with the lead into turn 3, side by side, the 3 rows behind. Then you get to Tyler Justice, Scott Shire, some of those guys riding single file. Real quickly, while this all goes on, if you like what you're seeing, make sure you tune in next week too. It's Kansas, 134 laps, 200 miles on just the Kansas side of Kansas City. It's going to be a wild one for round number 2 of the NORC iRacing Series Season 13. You do not want to miss it. You got to tune in the same time you did this evening, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll get you here just in time to catch the start of coverage from the Kansas Speedway. Again, it's a race you will not want to miss. Eric, this has been a whole lot of fun this evening now, coming up to about 30 laps to go, and the intensity has not dropped. It's just rising.
Yeah, we can expect it to rise in a continuous pace. And I was making the point earlier when my mic cut out on me there that these drivers nursing these damaged cars, Trey, we talked about handling characteristics as the run goes on, as the sun sets, as things change. all the damage to these cars has got to be playing a number on them in the draft as well. And we've seen it play a role in how they bump draft with one another and how they push each other off into the corner. It's just going to continue to get worse the more beaten and battered these cars get. And the more that these cars change, these guys can't really practice for this in these conditions. Usually you wreck out of a practice session, you reset, you go out, you try again. These guys are having to endure some circumstances that they've only been made privy to during this race. And I think it's playing a role in watching all the slipping and sliding we're seeing at the head of the field.
Yeah, those are a couple of excellent points, Eric. Especially what you said about really not being able to practice with damage, especially with just considering the fact that, you know, the damage you sustain is unique to the scenario in which you sustain the damage. So these drivers it would be incredibly difficult to replicate that. And then, yeah, otherwise it's going to really hurt you just all around the racetrack. In a straight line, you're going to have a lot of deficiency in a straight line as a result of that drag. And you get to the corner and you're not going to be able to rely on as much downforce, and the car's going to be a little bit more difficult to handle. And then if you've sustained engine damage, then that's going to hurt you even more in a straight line. That's just going to, you know, compound with the drag you experience from the cosmetic damage.
30 laps to go that time by the stripe. We can sit here and speculate all we want, but just nothing really has us prepared at all for the unknown in the next 29 laps of action from Daytona. Viewers, you've all seen this many times before. NORC at Daytona, things are about to get crazy. The lights are on, the sun is down, the sky is darkening. It's about to be the right time, as Larry Mack would say. That said, we just went single file through the entire top 10. I've not seen this before.
Yeah, this is a rather change of pace here as this race starts to unwind. And I'll pose the question. We're running 100% fuel load here on these cars this season and here tonight. So I have to wonder, you know, we can expect perhaps another caution as we see some drivers bobbing and weaving closer up towards the front. But Trey, when is that final pit window open, and what should the strategy be? Do you have to start finding guys to link up with here in case this race goes green? Do you want to come in early? Do you want to wait till the very end to make sure you don't get caught out by the yellow? What do we think some of these drivers are going to do here as far as trying to coordinate what may be their final stop of the night?
Yeah, that's a great couple of questions, Eric. Yeah, ultimately, I think Andrew started to hint at it when you were away. The fact that technically the window is open because a full fuel load is about 35 laps out here at Daytona International Speedway, looking at about 26 or 27 laps to go. The nice thing for these drivers is that they have a couple of methods of communication. They could be utilizing TeamSpeak right now, or they could be utilizing the iRacing in-game chat. So there's a couple of methods of trying to link up. But ultimately, I think you do want to try to look for at least a handful of drivers. And the other thing you want to ensure is the fact that you are on the inside line, or otherwise it could get a little bit hectic getting down onto the pit entry. Looks like we are starting to get a little bit more side-by-side action as we come to the completion of lap 73, Andrew.
Yeah, we've seen green flag pitting on plate tracks with the likes of the LTAC Cup Series, the Bluegrass iRacing Series. It's tough. It's going to be very tough for these drivers, especially in these Xfinity cars. Even less aero devices to work with and less drag. It's going to be harder to stop these race cars for sure, from about 200 miles an hour down to 55. And Zoltan Herczeg got the racetrack. He's going to lose a lot of time up there. We're starting to get peppered with this lap traffic. If these guys are not careful, as TCB with the save down low, they could run into problems. If somebody ducks up high, doesn't realize they're coming up to lap cars, it could get very dangerous very quickly.
I was just about to compliment the pairing that was that of Jared Darling and Zoltan Herczeg as they rocketed their way to the front very abruptly, and they got themselves up there in a contention. But right now we are seeing how Herczeg has gotten kicked up to the high side. Now we're on board with Terrell Baker, who's got a front row seat to this double-wide duel just ahead. That Darling is now being pushed by Howie Briss, while on the bottom side it's still Cody Miller and Daniel Falkingham. All these cars beaten up through earlier crashes, still putting on a heck of a show at the front of the field, and a couple of drivers starting to cycle their way back up towards the front. How about Matt Hummel? Talked about him earlier after being involved in some crashes. He's now running in 6th. As you see Falkingham catch the apron, starting to see some ebb and flow amongst this top 10, and that pack is starting to grow as there's more lap traffic ahead.
Yeah, they're going to efficiently get past the 5 of David Shutt. You know, a little bit close in a couple of bit of scenarios, but it looks like everyone's going to make it for the time being. We come out of turn 4, though, and it's about anyone that has a somewhat clean car that is in the lead draft right now. Looks like we still have about 15 or 20 drivers. Officially 3/4 of the way through this 250-mile race. And as you said, some new names starting to make their presence known here near the front half of the field.
So 25 laps to go that time by the stripe. 3 cars send themselves out in front of the field now as side-by-side for fourth is Terrell Baker and Jared Darling, Josh Robin, Matt Hummel. A lot of the usual players have put themselves back in this top 10. How about somebody we've not mentioned at all this evening aside from maybe the grid? This guy right here, Aaron Smith. I don't know how he's just kind of snuck through the field to put his number 70 into the top 10, but he is just quietly riding around in his Chevrolet Camaro, and I don't think he's got any damage just yet. That yellow machine has stayed very clean, and a lot of drivers rag on his yellow that he always comes to the racetrack with, but it's working for him this evening.
Yeah, it certainly kept him out of the way in terms of being involved in any of the other yellows that we've had here tonight. See what I did there? However, I will point out, he was one of the cars that we noticed was riding towards the back of the pack, now trying to thread the needle 3 wide here to go around Jared Darling, who got kicked up high. But it appears as though the strategy for Aaron Smith II is starting to pay off big as he is up in the top 10 here with, as you mentioned, Andrew, one of the cleanest looking cars. Kind of getting shuffled out here just a little bit in traffic as the field is about to funnel their way around another lap car. But he's in prime position to make advantage or take advantage of this opportunity. Now going around our reigning champion is Zoltan Herczeg, going to pull up here to the back bumper of Elijah Gracia and see if he can get another spot with the lap car just out ahead.
Yeah, ultimately, this is probably the first time he's been in the top 10 today, and we're just seeing how effective a clean car can be. He's going to rocket by some of these damaged vehicles with a full head of steam on the outside line. Not a lot of assistance right now for Aaron Smith. He's going to continue to battle side by side. I believe that might actually be a lap car looking at the relative. Oh, yeah, that's Elijah Gracia. We were seeing him earlier having some struggles trying to merge with the lead pack, and it looks like he does now start to have some of the momentum to be able to race with these guys, even if it's not for the battle for the lead.
Cody Miller is still your race leader. Daniel Falkingham setting second place. We talked about the weather earlier on, guys. Let's take a look at it now. Air temp has dropped to 68.5 degrees Fahrenheit, 73 on the racetrack. That's 8 degrees lower, I believe, than it was earlier on, or maybe 7 degrees lower, as the winds are kind of ebbing and flowing along with the field, up to about 8 miles per hour now. I'm sure it'll drop back down here momentarily. The wind's relatively calm, relatively sustained, as that was a big move for Aaron Smith down to the bottom side.
Smith now not only in the top 10, he's trying to get himself up to the top 5. A peek down low there by Josh Robin in the green number 8 car. He'll tuck back in line. And Smith is trying to make some noise, trying to follow Falkingham to the front of the pack. How about Bobby Gossett from the top to the bottom to try to go for the lead in 3?
And Gossett was a driver we've seen be incredibly aggressive in the previous races leading up to this 13th season of NORC. And he really forced the issue there on Howie Briss. And he's going to get the job done for the time being. He'll be the leader of lap 79. And yeah, we're just continuing to see the pressure mount. And the question becomes, are we going to see, the bubble pop? Are we going to see another massive incident? Or are we going to get a show going all the way to the end? And the other thing, pit stops do also continue to loom.
Tommy Gossett up to the point, battling with Howie Briss. Sheldon Lockey's in all of this as well. How about the 69 car now on the far side of lap 69? Decides it's time for him to get up there and race with the 97 of Howie Briss and everybody else up in this front pack. Tommy's still working down low. He's got help from Cody Miller currently. A couple of Supras down there. How about the fact that we've got Toyota Supras, on Pit Stop TV for the first time ever? These Supras look so cool, especially that bright yellow 54 of Tommy Gossett.
Yeah, that Pit Stop TV logo certainly shines pretty well under the lights of Daytona on that yellow Supra, but Howie Briss is trying to fight back up top, and we talked about Sheldon Lockey a little bit earlier. Briss is going to make the pass. Things got dodgy there in 1 and 2. Everybody had to check up on the bottom side, but remember, Lockey was running up towards the front of the pack after a restart, and he dropped like a rock. He did not have what it took to be up there and in contention, or perhaps he elected to play it safe. Now with 20 to go, he's getting pushed to the lead by the reigning champion, Zoltan Herczeg, up alongside, trying to get Lockey to the front, and they're double wide for 3 rows here as the race for the lead rages off 4.
It seems like Herczeg has really faded off in the middle stages, making his presence known only here and there. And now we're starting to see one of the better drivers in the series really start to make his presence known, back up into the top 5. And he has a lot of responsibility as that pusher on the outside line, and a lot of power as well, as he's going to give the opportunity for Lockey to take the race lead. And now he'll be the one being pushed by Jared Darling, who continues to push on despite the rear end damage.
To the far side, at 20 laps to go, we go. Just the last fifth of racing here at Daytona. Let's give you a bit of a recap. Justin Gable sits 29th. Dead last of all the drivers that showed this evening. Will Klein is, well, looks like he is done for the evening as well. We never really even got to see that 48 car. He's 28th. Brandon Stringer, 27th. Ari Adi in the 26th spot. David Shutt, 16 laps down, runs 25th. Cole Freilich, 14 laps down, runs 24th. John Barry in 23rd, 11 laps down. Elijah Drew Gracia, he's in this lead pack, but his 22nd spot, 2 laps down to the race leaders. Taylor Frey also is a lap down. He's 21st, and your current lucky dog candidate. Patrick Colby, he runs 20th. Hayes Booth, 11th. Bobby Cheney, 18th. Tom Mercier, 17th. We'll keep going forward. Justin Ford, Scott Shire, Tyler Justice, Spencer Owens, Sean Williams, Josh Robin. They're all 11th on back to the top 10, top left of your screen, and things are getting exciting.
I'm starting to wonder if we're starting to enter that danger zone as far as pit stops. We're seeing things kind of settle down here, single file throughout most of the pack, while we still have Sheldon Lockey leading the field. Howie Briss has been working very well with Lockey to get him there. Tommy Gossett in third. Cody Miller, who led a number of laps in the second half of this race, now running in fourth. And Falkingham is fifth, but that final pit stop is looming. And Trey, I didn't think that green flag pit stops was going to be an element for us to really talk about tonight, but we're starting to approach that time where it's going to have to happen. And if that's the case, I would imagine we're going to see some strategy. These guys may just want to make sure they got their fuel number down so that way they can spend as little amount of time on the pit lane possible. This may be a strategy race after watching all this bobbing and weaving up towards the front.
Yeah, and I absolutely have to love it. Get a little bit of everything in this race so far. If you're a fan of accidents, you had a couple of accidents. Sure, not a huge one or a big one, if you will, but we've also seen a lot of very aggressive and reasonable and controlled racing. And now, yeah, as you said, we're within about 5 or 10 laps of getting that opportunity for drivers to utilize some strategy. And that was a very important point that you brought up. These guys don't have to fill up on 2 full cans, rather, of virtual Sunoco race fuel. So it's probably only going to be about 5 or so seconds. It might not even be a position where you want to take 2 tires on the right side.
No, I think it's gas and go for these drivers whenever they do come in. That said, if we could run about 40 laps on fuel, these guys are only 2-3 laps shy of race distance here. They've been running now for about 27, 28 laps since they last pitted under caution. That gives us about 12, 13 more. That takes us right to about, it looks like, lap 97, lap 98 of 100. That is how close they are to being good on fuel. And obviously these guys are drafting, they're lifting, they're able to reduce drag on their race cars by sitting in behind one another. They could have all saved to this point. We could have drivers that are only 1 lap shy, a half a lap shy. Of course, we could have drivers who've been flat out this entire run and could be 4 laps shy. We just don't know.
Yeah, and the time to find out is approaching relatively quickly, and we're still seeing things shake up here towards the front of the field. One driver who has been very bold in making sure the top side works is not only that of Zoltan Herczeg, but it's also a driver who we've talked about a couple of times here tonight and has been up in contention, and this is the first time we've seen some aggression. Was going to talk about Tom Mercier, but here we go. These guys apparently do not think they can make it the whole way. We're starting to see some cars dive for the pit lane. It's going to be Howie Briss leading them down. Also, Jared Darling is in that mix, and I believe I saw one other car come down. It's number 93 who is going to come in for service as well in that Hummel. So this is the first move that we're seeing here for cars that have to stop. It's going to shake things up here towards the front with 14 to go.
We continue to watch the battles up front, and looking at the picture on pit road, it looks like we are going to see all 3 of them come out at a relatively same time. So those guys are going to probably have enough momentum to be in contention later in the run. That is, of course, if all of the drivers do have to come down onto the pit lane. So we have a little bit more single file. Conventionally, you would think, that probably means drivers are wanting to come down the pit lane. We're just going to have to continue to watch. We have at least one driver ducking down, and that's going to be quite unfortunate.
That's Tom Mercier pitting that time by. He had finally gotten aggressive, finally moved up to the front of the field now, comes down the pit lane all by his lonesome. What's interesting to me as well is these drivers have to figure out how much fuel they want to take, and that, I think, is going to show a lot of separation in these closing laps. And they also, oh my gosh, as Cole Freilich just bodied Josh Robin. Thankfully, the 8 keeps racing. We stay green flag. That could have been very, very dangerous for everybody on back from the 8 car. But I think what's going to create a lot of our delta here into pit stops is how much fuel these drivers take. I expect no tires. I expect just a matter of how many gallons do you take. Do you only get yourself good to the end of this race, or do you account for green-white checkers?
Yeah, and I'm starting to wonder now if the cars that we saw come down with the likes of that of Darling and company, if maybe they were trying to somehow maybe split the end of this thing, but considering the fuel strategy, it looks like they all kind of got in agreement as far as how much fuel they were going to need and had to take. So we're seeing now the lead pack as far as Herczeg and Miller and Lockie all kind of stay out for about 3 or 4 laps more. So, yeah, and we've seen it before in many other races on the platform as Herczeg starts to pull out wide here. It looks as though maybe he wants to fall back. Also, Andrew, maybe we're going to start to see some of these guys try to play a little bit of fuel strategy and stretch it to the end. Odd move there by Herczeg to pull up. That's the only thing that I could think of that could be taking place for him. But I don't think we're done seeing this wave of strategy kind of, wiggle its way throughout the pack as most of the field's going to bypass pit lane again.
Yeah, all we can do is, question the decision there by Herczeg, because it didn't seem like he was really forced to the outside line, and judging by the fact that he's not being incredibly aggressive and trying to duck back down onto the inside line, have to wonder if this is by design for him. A little hard to see the benefits, but, maybe there is something that we don't know that potentially he knows. Maybe he is close on his fuel number, and maybe he's going back to the rear of the field to try to get in a position to utilize that slipstream and save some fuel.
We'll see if drivers opt to pit this time by. If they don't, they'll be faced with 10 laps to go at the start-finish line. This time around the speedway. Some jockeying further back. Patrick Colby up on the wall. He's going to pass Zoltan Herczeg. No pitting just yet from these guys. This is a bit more along the lines of what I would have expected. Wait the race out. See if you can draw a caution flag. See if you can avoid the green flag pit stops as Tommy Gossett's going to go up high with Sheldon Lockie.
It's going to be Gossett and Lockie now trying to get the job done as they go to the outside of Cody Miller. And Miller has no friends. He's all alone on the bottom of the racetrack now. Smith is going to follow. Falkingham is going to follow. Also, you got Owens who's starting to close up there. How about Smith slicing to the bottom now? We're starting to see a lot of aggression out of that yellow number 70 that we highlighted a few laps ago. He's up on the backside of Lockie here. They're going to come by the lap car that elects to go to the apron. Heads up move there by John Berry. And we're going to approach the pit entry here once more. We'll see if we have any takers as a couple of cars peel down to the low side. No, they're going to all stay on the racetrack with Sheldon Lockie, the leader.
9 laps to go, and as you were saying, Andrew, we have to wonder how long these guys are stretching it. And I have to wonder if some of these guys think they have enough fuel, especially with how aggressive we were seeing some of those battles and the continuation of side-by-side action here. Currently the top man in the outside line, it is the Pit Stop TV livery car of Tommy Gossett with a little bit of help behind him.
What I find interesting is the possibility that running hard and staying as a group, staying side by side, could actually help you save more fuel, possibly reduce drag on cars further back in that little group, and help them, save more fuel, go further on the fuel they were currently burning, and use less over the course of a run. I think that's a crazy possibility, but certainly one that we've got to think about. Could running side by side actually adversely help these guys? Wow, Tommy was barely clear that time down in front of Sheldon Lockie.
Yeah, we both had a bit of an ooh moment there collectively, Andrew, because I saw that number 54 potentially going around. So again, scored as a number 80, and Tommy Gossett. It was a tight squeeze to get up in front of Lockie, but he got the job done. Aaron Smith II, not a name that we called up at the head of the pack all race long until just 1 lap ago. He now finds himself in the lead, and does he have enough fuel to get to the finish, and can he fend off the challenge of the competition after everybody has seemingly found ways to manipulate this draft to get passes made? We've had so many lead changes tonight. I don't think we're done yet, but we may see a defensive driving clinic come from Aaron Smith II if he's got some cooperation from Tommy Gossett. They lead the field to the line, and everybody remains on track.
It's going to be only 7 laps to go this time by, and we're yet again seeing a resurgence in the outside line. Sheldon Lockie was a driver leading just a couple laps ago, and now he's going to be the one leading the outside line. Currently, 6 cars have separated from the rest of the lead draft, and it's side-by-side behind them. A lot of support from Daniel Falkingham is going to make it a great decision for Lockie to go the inside line if he wants it. And Falkingham might even have the opportunity to drop down if he wants to. He'll decide against it. contact between the top two. Folkengham's going to save it, but he's going to lose out big on track position.
What a save from Sheldon Lockie and Daniel Folkengham. Still, nobody opts to pit and maybe save themselves from what could be impending doom for this entire field if they keep racing like that. Colby gets down to the inside of Tommy Gossett. They are really throwing some moves now. 6 laps to go that time by. Wow. Just wow.
And somehow Sheldon Lockie has gone back to the point, but here comes Josh Robin. We've seen that car sideways. We've seen that car backwards. The only thing we haven't seen is that car upside down. But he's got a mega run coming up top. Lap car to the inside, trying to use it as a pick. They're going to go by David Shutt cleanly, and Josh Robin to the point after Cody Miller shoves him to the lead. They're going to be coming around to 5 laps to go. We'll see if anybody has to duck to the pit lane. So far, no. Robin the leader, but here comes Miller up top. Robin the block.
Oh my gosh.
The clock just continues to tick. The laps continue to wind down. And that was an incredibly aggressive block from the 8. We haven't seen a lot of drivers come from the inside line to go to block the momentum of the outside line just because it's such a move that invokes so much risk and so much danger. But Robin has gotten to the point in time where he says, you know, all bets are off. We have to race as hard as possible for the race win. Still not a lot of separation between the top 4 cars right now. It is an absolute dead heat right now between Miller and Robin as we head down the super stretch. It's going to be 4.5 laps to go. 4 to go at the line this time.
Coming back around turns 3 and 4, we'll be faced with just 4 trips back around the Daytona International Speedway to crown a race winner for the first time in NORC Season 13. 4 laps to go. That's 10 miles. I don't know how they're going to last. I really don't know how they're going to last 10 more miles.
We've seen some pretty incredible driving by this entire field here tonight. Sure, there's been some accidents. Sure, there's been some cautions, but there has been a lot of busy hands for all these competitors, and heads up move there, but a lap traffic to get out of the way. Josh Robin, the leader out at turn number 2. Sheldon Lockie, though, right there with him, and that is going to have to be Robin's best friend. Now, Robin appeared poised to try to play both sides of the traffic as Cody Miller starts to draw even with him in 3. Robin's going to have to either hope he continues to get a solid shove from the 69, or he's going to have to start getting a little bit more aggressive, trying to protect that top side as they come out of 4, and they're side by side for the lead again, back to the line.
From 1 lap, still not a lot of change right now. It's going to continue to be Cody Miller. He'll be the leader by about a car length at the start-finish line. He utilizes the option to go to the inside line, really stalls the inside line's momentum as they have to adjust to a merging Cody Miller, and now the leader of the outside line, it's going to be none other than Tyler Justice, who really hasn't made his presence known here since the middle stages of the race. In fact, he was involved in an incident, I believe it was around the 50 lap mark.
I think he's been at all 3, just by virtue of being towards the front of the field. This guy made his presence known early. It's taken him a while to get back up into the front, but now with 3 laps to go, coming to popsicle sticks this time by, when do these guys run out of fuel?
I would guess it's going to be soon. I don't know how anybody could have saved anything. I think they're all wishing for a yellow. They just don't want to be the reason for the caution, but they hit the line with 2 to go. Miller inside. He's got Josh Robin behind him in the 8. Outside, leading that pack is going to be that of Tyler Justice with the very clean and composed Aaron Smith II trying to push him clear to the lead. We're going to be coming around to the white flag next time by. That would make this race official. Will they all make it there as they're double wide for 5-6 rows deep on the backstretch?
And you mentioned Smith. He is in an absolute prime position right now. If he wants to give the shove to the leading car of Tyler Justice, he can do it. Justice can clear himself to the bottom, and Smith would be the one in control of the outside line. You have a lot of power and a lot of control as long as you have the push from behind. So we're going to come out of turn 4. It's only going to be 2.5 miles, 1 lap to go here to open the NORC season at Daytona.
I can't believe what this is setting up for. Tyler Justice on the outside leads the penultimate lap. 1 lap to go at Daytona for NORC Season 13. It's the first race of these Xfinity cars since back in Season 7. The number 7 car on the outside of Cody Miller, Josh Robin down low. One of the favorites all day long. What changes down this backstretch? What changes to change this race the next time around the stripe? Everybody low low on fuel, running on fumes at this point, Eric Brennan. I don't know what's going to happen. How do we make it back to the stripe? Still side by side. How are they doing this? One around Hayes Booth. TCB hard involved. They're going to drag race. They're going to beat. They're going to bang back to the stripe. Tyler Justice might have a way to do it, but Cody Miller is going to lead to the stripe and win at Daytona.
What an incredible job by Cody Miller after being able to withstand the pressure from the outside line by Tyler Justice. Final margin of victory, 32 thousandths of a second. But what a job by this driver. We mentioned the first time that we've had the Supra on Pit Stop TV. It's going to be the first time we have a Supra go to victory lane, and Miller did everything right tonight. We thought the outside lane was going to get the job done. We thought that perhaps Tyler Justice was going to have the push that he needed, especially after Josh Robin got ping-ponged down to the inside, but Miller never lifted. They all made it back on fuel, and it's Miller who gets the edge and the win. Trey, I cannot believe they made it to turns 3 and 4 without wrecking, and I cannot believe that Miller was able to hold on for that final lap.
Yeah, that was absolutely fantastic. It does almost become a given to have an accident once you get to the white flag at these super speedways. That's just where the aggression comes out, and unfortunately, a lot of drivers got collected as a result. But yeah, it just seemed like there was a lot more cohesion in the inside line. Cody Miller's going to be the one to benefit as a result of that. He's going to be the one that's going to be able to celebrate in the tri-oval at Daytona as a result. But yeah, overall, it just seemed like the outside line, it was a little bit discombobulated coming out of turn 4. Not quite linked up between the 7 of Justice and Folkingham, or Smith rather, as they would have liked. And yeah, Miller's going to be your winner to open the season.
The 28 car of Cody Miller. I mentioned there were only 6 previous winners in this race at Daytona in points racing competition in the NORC iRacing Series. Cody Miller's done it twice, now 3 times here at Daytona. Keeping the wins pretty tight to talent here in the NORC iRacing Series. Cody Miller gets it done at the Daytona International Speedway. Tyler Justice, 2nd place. Sheldon Lockie, 3rd. What do you say we take a quick look back at what happened on that final lap? Let's see if we can't watch it all back. That was insane.
That was an insane call, Andrew Cardinale IV. I'll tell you, I don't know how you kept your breath that final lap. I was sitting here holding mine all the way through. This is at the white flag, and as you see, Justice had a bit of a lead there by a half car lane, so this is going to go down in the record books as a last lap pass, even though Miller was protecting the inside. But it looked as though that these guys were just going to seemingly stay stuck in this position unless somebody burped on fuel, and that never happened. Bottom lane starts to prevail out of turn number 2 with Josh Robin starting to push Miller clear, and I think that's what Robin wanted. I think he wanted to get Miller far enough out ahead so that way he could jump up in front of the 7 of Justice, but then the outside line came coming again. Aaron Smith the second with a big push, and Shuttlesworth, here's where the chaos starts to break through. We're going to see Hayes Booth be the first to go around, and then the charge to the checkers was on.
Yeah, and the drivers that were near the back end of this lead draft, they were in a position where they were just going to need extreme circumstances to get away with a race win. And for the likes of TCB and Hayes Booth, that well marked the end of their chances for a race win. And they're also going to lose out on some points as a result. Have to remember these guys do have to race for points here. There you see Robin darting to the inside line. Not sure if there was contact or not. But, eventually he decides, look, I have to try and merge back up the racetrack. And then this drag race to the line, somewhat 3 wide, spinning between, among some of the top 3. Lockie's going to come away with a 3rd place, but just Miller was able to utilize the momentum of the inside line and get the job done. Very fun to watch, very fun race through all 250 miles.
So Cody Miller goes down as the first race winner in NORC Season 13. Stay tuned. Post-race interviews now on the way from the NORC iRacing Series and Daytona International Speedway. Fireworks off the Daytona Super Stretch high above Lake Lloyd. We will be right back here at Pit Stop TV.
Sound Art introduces an entirely new way to listen to music in your home. By combining the best of two products, a revolutionary high-fidelity, low-profile Bluetooth wireless speaker with beautiful artwork. Select from a library of artwork or upload your own photos to personalize your experience. Sound Art ushers in an era of invisible, beautiful, and amazing sound throughout your home and redefines your entire entertainment system. The need to reclaim your floor space and rid your home of unsightly speaker boxes that need to be bolted to the wall is now a thing of the past. Our canvas is printed on high-quality permalite by Breathing Color. And select from our gallery or upload your own. Standard sizes include 16 by 20 and 18 by 24 canvas wrapped. Custom sizing is available, as well as surround sound options.
After months of quarantine, we're all interested in how we can become our best self. The team at Permanent Makeup and Cryo is here to help you get the flawless makeup look every day without the extra effort or time. When it comes to your appearance, you deserve the best care that money can buy.
Welcome back to the Daytona International Speedway. 2.5 miles of pavement. It never surprises me, some of the finishes we have here. It seems surprising in the moment, but it feels like it fits in to just have new ways to keep having amazing finishes here at Daytona International Speedway. This place holds so much history. I talked about it towards the top of the show, Eric. This place is just... It's riddled with new ways to change things up, new ways to rewrite history books, add to them. It's just amazing stuff that always goes down here in Daytona Beach, Florida. Be it real life, be it virtually, doesn't matter what it is. It always just finds a new way to surprise us, and then when you think about it, it's not all that surprising. That said, Cody Miller walks out of here a race winner for the third time now in point racing competition. Cody, how about a new race win?
I mean, yeah, race car, right? We won it.
It didn't look like you were going to win it. You were kind of midfield most of this race, and then eventually just the last few laps. Talk about post that, I guess, after that last caution. You guys all knew that you had about 40-ish laps to go. What was it, 43, I think it ended up being, and you were all very close. Did you know at that point you were going to the end, or was it a matter of trying to save fuel?
Absolutely not, right? See, usually I don't think about these things, but at that last caution, I'm like, you know what? We're going to pit, right? Because I never pit in that situation. It screwed me over plenty of times, right? So I'm like, all right, we're going to pit, take fuel. So in case for some reason it goes to the end, because this somehow happens in this league, then I should be at least, decent, right?
Well, it ends up working out. Talk about working with Josh Robin as well. He gave you a couple of big shots, kept you up there, and allowed you to race with Tyler Justice to the finish.
Didn't even notice. But no, I love him. I'm surprised. I mean, he had nowhere to go. But I mean, I'm happy he decided to stick with me, and not just try to back off to make moves. But I mean, good. I'm happy. Good for him. Good for every whoever was above me. Yeah. But yeah, that was a great finish.
Well, Cody, 24 races now remain on the schedule. Obviously, I don't believe we're winning you're in this season, but certainly a pretty good start. How do you think you fare the rest of the way?
Completely awful, and I have no chance.
All right, well, before we let you go, who do you want to shout out this evening?
Well, shout out Robin for, being him, for somehow pushing me. That's why I'm still, surprised he pushed me here. But thanks to Robin. Thanks to everybody over at Team TCB for throwing together god-awful race cars week in and week out so I can go and kill them in some way, shape, or form. And thank you guys here, Pit Stop TV, to, for talking while we drive. That's always, that's amazing. Thank John Barry for Not actually. I don't thank him because he didn't give me a discount to race this season, even though I'm only going to be like sort of part-time. But I mean, I guess fine. He made us race.
Well, congratulations tonight, Mel. We'll see you next week at Kansas. Best of luck to you.
Yeah, luck, sure.
Cody Miller wins this evening at Daytona. That's classic Cody Miller. That is exactly what is to be expected from Cody Miller. It's a big win though for him, and certainly going to help him start his season off right. We're going to skip down the ways a little bit. Looks like we're still waiting on Tyler Justice to join us in the NORC TeamSpeak. So we're going to go down to third place real quick, and I'll hand it over to Trey so it's still kind of who is expecting to go with who. Trey will bring in Sheldon Lockie. Actually, I don't see Sheldon Lockie either. Now that I mentioned that, I kind of threw us in. No, I do see Sheldon Lockie. He's there. He's deaf, and we'll get him in here.
So we'll have to see if Sheldon Lockie's with us though. But I mean, overall, it was a driver who remained relatively consistent. He was, he remained pretty, consistently up front for most of the evening, remained fairly loyal, and that's going to earn him a third place finish tonight, and that rounds out the podium. And with this being a season where you have to keep points in mind because it's a little bit condensed, it's important to come away from round one with a good points day. But it looks like we still don't have him quite yet.
Well, as we try and get our drivers here at the end of this race, I've never had this problem before. I'm not really sure how to go about this. We'll move on down the line then. If we don't have Sheldon Lockie, you know what? We always like talking to one Justin Ford, so we can skip on down the ways a little bit, and I'll hand things over to Eric Brennan with Justin Ford.
Thanks a lot, Andrew Cardinale, and I'll tell you, I like talking to drivers all throughout the field in a race like this. And Justin, first off, welcome to the broadcast booth. From our perspective, this event was crazy. Now, as somebody who started way back in the field, ends up leaving this event with a top 10. Overall, what was your view of how the night unfolded? Was it what you were expecting? Did you think we'd make it to the end? The fuel mounting? How did the race unfold for you? And what are your thoughts that we just wrapped up this 100-lap season opener?
Well, first of all, that was a fun first 100-lap season opener, so I'll take that. And that was my first experience with these guys, so it was a good time. And from the back coming up through the front, it was pretty much just hanging out, trying not to kill people, which unfortunately I did. I killed Elijah, so I'm pretty good at that. But, it was a good time.
And that kind of answered my next question. Was it strategy from the start of the race, just kind of hang around to the end? And if so, when was the point at which you were going to hit the go button and start to try to work your way further forward? Because you did a good job at that, avoiding most of the carnage. And a top 10 after a night like tonight, it's something to be proud of for sure.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting the top 10, so I'm pretty happy with that. And yeah, it was definitely my strategy going into it because I didn't really know what to expect, how aggressive everyone was going to be. So I'm like, I'll hang out back, not going to push it, don't want to make a mess of myself, and just kind of pick my way up. And hopefully around towards the end, 5 laps to go, try to get into a position that if something happens, I can capitalize.
With about 12 to go, we did see about 3 or 4 of the front runners have to hit the pit lane for service. Fuel mileage became a very big thing at the end. I can't believe that the cars that made it to the end did. How close were you on fuel, and at what point did you decide, you know what, we're just going to keep going to the end and hope we have enough?
Pretty much once everybody started trying to figure out if they had to pit or not, I kind of looked down, realized that I was technically I had 1 lap to good. So I was like, well, we're just going to send it and see what happens. Better than nothing. And I literally ran out of gas in the corner right after we passed the line. So I was pretty happy to make it.
That's about as close as you could absolutely get it. And I know that from Daytona onto Kansas 1 week from now, 2 very different animals. I know that you've mentioned that you're new to the NORC League and all that they have to offer, and they've done an amazing job here tonight. But for you, Kansas not being as much of a crapshoot as we normally see the super speedway stuff, what are your thoughts and your level of confidence heading into that round for the second race of the season at Kansas just 1 week from tonight?
Level of confidence is pretty much good going into everything, just kind of there to enjoy, learn from everyone else. And I'm going to probably do the same thing, hang out and figure out my way through and hopefully be around a good spot at the end.
Well, Justin, thanks for taking some time to come on in and talk with us and celebrate a top 10 finish. And best of luck for you and the rest of the season, especially 1 week from tonight at Kansas. Great job, man. Stayed out of trouble, made it to the end. It's a solid way to start the year.
Hey, thanks, man. I'm pretty happy about it. And thanks for doing this, guys.
Thanks a lot. That is Justin Ford, as we mentioned, who came home in the 00 in the 10th spot at the end of today's 100th lap event, the season opener for NORC in their 13th season of competition. And Andrew, looks as though we may have a couple of drivers waiting in the wings to talk about and celebrate their front-running finishes tonight as well.
Yeah, we do finally have the Tyler Justice, and Trey, I'll hand him your way.
Hello, Tyler. First of all, I want to say thank you for joining us after what was a pretty grueling race. But initially, I mean, how does it feel to come away with the second place in the first round?
Pretty good, man. I mean, first race here, so wasn't really expecting to get too much out of it. I just wanted to kind of ride there and see what happens. But we were able to get up there early in the race and mix it up a little bit. And then I didn't feel too comfortable, so we dropped back to the back and ended up getting caught up in a wreck there. But luckily, we only had like 15 seconds of damage, so it didn't hurt us too bad. And was there at the end, just riding in the back, trying to save a little bit of fuel. We came in and topped off with 1 to green on that last caution, so I felt pretty good about it. But I didn't know how others were on fuel or if anybody was going to run out there. So we got down to 7 to go, and I thought it was go time. So we drove up through there pretty quick and was able to get first there on the outside. I don't know who was pushing me there, but they did a good job. Just came up a little short there, and I do want to apologize to Josh. I kind of doored him a little bit there out of 4. I was trying to keep it hugged tight there to Cody to try to beat him to the line. But no, overall, it was a great race, good result for us, and happy to come away with second.
And hypothetically, going into the last run, would you rather have been on the outside line or the inside line? Obviously, tonight it doesn't work out with the outside line. Had a pretty solid push from it was Aaron Smith II who was pushing you for the last couple of laps, but yeah, just come up a little bit shy.
Yeah, I think I probably still would have picked outside there. I mean, he did a good job, but like it just depends who's pushing you and how hard he can push you without, hooking you and turning you. But he was doing a good job. I think he did all he could there. It just seemed like the bottom lane was more organized and formed up there, so they were able to get a better pull going into 3, and we weren't able to suck back up to him coming out of 4. But overall, I was pleased with it. I'd probably take the outside again, but just didn't work out.
And the other thing that was a topic of conversation on that last run is fuel. What were your numbers looking like? Were you confident in being able to make it to the end?
Yeah, I was pretty good there. We were, like I said, I started pulling out and trying to get up there with like 7 to go, and I was still 3 laps to the good at that point. I don't know what I was there at the end. I didn't check, but I know around 7 laps to go, we still had three to the good in the tank. So I felt pretty comfortable about it, and we were able to send it up through there and not have to worry about it there. So that was pretty good.
And then looking ahead beyond the first round here, Daytona, what are your expectations as we head to Kansas Speedway next week for round 2?
I like Kansas. I haven't really done any testing there since the new surface model and all. So I have to put some time in there and figure out what works and what don't, because I know it'll be different from the past. But I like Kansas overall. So like I said, we'll just have to put in some test laps, and I think we'll be good.
All right, and then before you bid us farewell for the night, Tyler, anyone you want to thank out there for your efforts tonight, finishing runner-up?
Yeah, shout out to all my teammates at Phase 2 Motorsports. Thank all our sponsors, Gearhead Coffee, Amsoil, Matrix Muscle Cars. Thank you guys for having me in the league, and shout out to all the drivers out there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tyler. You have a great night.
Appreciate it. You too.
So that's Tyler Justice. He'll finish second place tonight in the opening round of the 13th season here with NORC.
There we go. Not quite the top 3, but we get 3 interviews in post-race here at Daytona. Sounds like Sheldon Lockie had some stuff pop up that he had to go tend to. Unfortunately, we didn't get to talk to him. Maybe we can talk to him throughout the week at some point, but he does grab 3rd place behind a couple of drivers that we did talk to. Cody Miller, Tyler Justice, separated by just 3/100ths of a second, Eric. You got then Sheldon Lockie in 3rd, as I mentioned. Aaron Smith comes through in 4th. Josh Robin 5th. Tommy Gossett hangs on for 6th spot. Great start to his season as well. Daniel Falkingham recovers to 7th. Patrick Colby out of nowhere, 8th place, number 9. Sean Williams keeps the top 10. And Justin Ford, we talked to him just barely, grabs that 10th spot.
Then we get back to some names that we talked about throughout this race, including that of Spencer Owens, who was in that what looked like the Landon Castle Blue Emu livery that he ran in some sim racing events and also with JD Motorsports. And he was 2 seconds off the pace after getting swept up in some trouble late. Also, Terrell Baker led a number of laps in the opening go-around, was swept up in that last lap crash, as was our very own Hayes Booth, who salvaged a 13th place finish despite getting turned in turn 3 on the final lap. Scott Shire was 14th and 15th. Bobby Chaney, who spun on the back straightaway without the assistance of a caution, came back up through the field, was running top 10, got in another big wreck. Top 15 on the lead lap is something for Bobby Chaney to be proud of. Howie Briss was leading there towards the end. Remember, he was one of the cars that had to come down pit road with 12 to go, as did Tom Mercier, who unfortunately pitted by himself after having a shot to win. Jared Darling led some laps in this race as well, was 18th. Matt Hummel was in contention, and our reigning champion, Zoltan Herczeg, starts off his championship title defense with a 20th place finish.
And then we look to what is the final 9 tonight. All drivers that won't be able to claim a finish on the lead lap. Taylor Frey is going to be the first driver. He finishes 1 lap down and unfortunately doesn't seem to get too much airtime tonight. Same for Elijah Grassi. I believe Grassi was involved in the first incident tonight. He'll come home 22nd place, 2 laps down. Then we did see some damage for John Barry from that incident where he was just unable to save the car onto the entry of turn 1 after a bad bump. He'll come home in 23rd place. And I think Cole Freilich was a driver that was actually involved in the first incident. He's going to get all the damage, persevere, and come back out with a 24th place finish. And then in 25th place is a driver who was getting, quite frankly, a decent amount of airtime, just logging laps near the back end of the race, and that's David Schutt. Ariati will come home in 26th place, 52 laps down, and then it'll be 27th place finish for Brandon Stringer, who will come home 58 laps down. Your final 2 tonight are going to be Will Klein and Justin Gable, each finishing 80 laps down and 81 laps down in this 100 lap opener of the NORC season.
29 cars came out to Daytona. Only one was able to win. It was the number 28 of Cody Miller. You got to tune in next week, though. You can't just see Daytona and leave it alone. You've got to come back to Kansas Speedway in 1 week's time at 6:30 p.m. Eastern again for coverage of race number 2 of NORC Season 13. It's going to be a fun one out at Kansas Speedway. I'm very much looking forward to seeing these guys go intermediate racing for the first time this season. It should be a whole lot of fun, Eric.
Yeah, and I will tell you, first of all, a lot of us do this, whether it's race or commentate or, be a part of the sport because we love the sport of auto racing. I think if you were to, kind of get a read on the pulse of many stock car fans in 2021, I think a lot of people really like the NASCAR now Xfinity Series package as opposed to what the Cup Series is running on the majority of their racetracks. And I'm excited for this series to kind of back that up because even on the super speedway, where many would think that aerodynamic design and car layout and horsepower may not matter all that much because of the equal governance as far as underneath the hood of the car, I'm pretty confident that tonight was a good example as to what we're going to see all season long. I don't think it'll matter if we're on a short track, a road course, a 1.5 mile oval like we're going to next week at Kansas. This style car and this caliber of field is destined to put on one of the best seasons in sim racing you will find in 2021. And I think that they've hit the nail on the head as far as the formula. I think the cast of characters we have as far as drivers is going to make it all the more entertaining. And that schedule that we highlighted to kick off our broadcast tonight is incredible. And I'm just really happy to be a part of it. This race didn't let us down. This series is not going to let anybody down with all that they have in store for this year. And we've got one hell of a race under our belt already and plenty more still to come, Trey.
Yeah, you were starting to hit on the points, Eric, about the diversity of the schedule. And honestly, a stock car schedule should be as diverse as possible. We're going to some short tracks that, Top Flight NASCAR has not been to, such as the Nashville Fairgrounds. We'll be heading to Bristol Dirt. A dual feature at Talladega, 30 laps apiece. That's going to be relatively fun because that's going to be, all out from the get-go. And there's a lot of other days which are going to be a lot of fun. And then we get to the chase, or the playoffs rather, if you will, the last final 6 or 7 rounds, ending at a very fun intermediate track, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, very quick. And that will be an excellent way to end a 25 race round. And I look forward to it with what is my favorite car, NASCAR stock car on the iRacing.com service. And that's the car utilized for the Xfinity Series.
I gotta ask before we go, quick final thoughts from you guys before we wrap up here from Daytona. I mean, personally, I feel like this was a pretty good season opener. Only 3 cautions. There were a few massive crashes in those 3 cautions, sure, and a couple of smaller incidents that didn't quite get yellows. But I think we had great racing throughout. It came up to a big moment of suspense where drivers going to run out of fuel, where drivers maybe going to crash before they got back to the start-finish line. We just didn't know what was going to happen at any point in this race.
Yeah, and it kept evolving that way, which was the crazy thing about it, Andrew, is we saw drivers get involved in the first big wreck about 20 laps in and thought, oh, they're done. They don't have a chance. And then they would come back with the rear bumper all mangled and beaten up and the spoiler pointing in different directions. And if they could push properly or take a shove properly, they remained in contention for this race. Now, the winner, Cody Miller, didn't have too many dings and dents on his race car when all was said and done. But the variables as far as who, or the unpredictability as far as who would win this race went all the way down to the last lap. I have no idea how a number of the front runners made it to the end on fuel. I also have no idea how they ran that last green flag stretch between cycling through single file, double file, guys coming from the back to the front and vice versa. And the saves that we saw tonight, I mean, we have enough highlights to pull from this event to put on one incredible compilation of driving ability with this series because of just how some of these guys were able to hang on when all hope appeared lost as far as saving their race car. You're harping on the fact we didn't have that many yellows, really didn't have that many incidents for a 100-lap plate race. I'm impressed. I really, and I'm not just saying that because we're partnered with the series. I was thoroughly entertained, and I know so because that 100-lap event went by quickly, and I'm already counting down till we get to Kansas in 1 week. And Trey, I'm sure that you feel the same.
Yeah, all I can do for the most part is reflect a lot of what you guys have already said. It was a race that had it had a few incidents throughout the running of the 250 miles, but it had a very consistent pace to it. And drivers, they might have let up at a couple of periods of time, but there was never a consistent lull in the race, which we saw in the Daytona 500. And that's nothing against the drivers in the Daytona 500. That's just the nature of a 500-mile race. Eventually, you're going to want to relax and get strung out for what is a race that ends up being 2.5, 3+ hours long. So yeah, overall, just very impressed that these drivers were able to be as aggressive as they were without any, incidents that take out 10, 15, 20 cars. Just a lot of minor incidents as well, just due to drivers being able to react properly and, to the incidents happening in front of them. Just all around, very exciting as a finish, as well as you see the visuals of Cody Miller taking the first race victory.
The one race in the books, as we've talked about multiple times now. You've got to tune in to the next 23 weeks of action with that dual week of 2 races in one night. It's going to be a whole lot of fun here for NORC Season 13, back in these Xfinity cars for the first time since season number 7. As we get ready to depart from Daytona International Speedway, as always, a thank you to our partners. These broadcasts would not be possible without Tucson Sound Art. Your picture, your music. You provide the image you want, and they will custom create a beautiful framed high-quality canvas with a built-in Bluetooth speaker. You can use promo code PITSTOPTV at checkout for 10% off of your order from TucsonSoundArt.com today. These broadcasts also are not possible without Race Pace setups. These setups are quite simply the setups that you need to get if you're looking to compete in any GT3 action, and they're branching out into more than just GT3 as well. By special request, even I think by more popular demand soon, they are going to branch out into more than just GT3 and Porsche Cup cars. You've got to head over to their Discord to see what they are cooking up for you next. A lot of great stuff is going on over there, and I know they've got a lot of great setups on the way. In fact, if you're looking to get some of those official races in this week, I think we're going to Daytona in some of the European series. I forget where IMS is going this week. I think Road America. They've got setups for it at Race Pace Setups. Make sure you head on over. These broadcasts are not possible without permanent makeup and cryo in Maine. Your appearance deserves the best care that money can buy. By all means, if you're in the market for any makeup, or permanent makeup rather, or cryotherapy work, check these guys out up in the state of Maine. Auburn, Harrison, Lewiston, Maine. They've got multiple locations up there. Check them out, 207-358-8683. They get you taken care of today. Ashley Bollier and her team of specialists are the ones that you want to go to. And of course, these broadcasts definitely not possible without Whiplash Media, the official camera and graphic provider of Pit Stop TV that brings all of these sights and sounds to you week in, week out, sometimes day in, day out. Thank you so much to NORC, all of NORC's fans, the NORC drivers, everybody here with the series for having us along for the first race of this amazing Season 13. It is going to be a fun one. A long-time driver of the series. I didn't think this day would ever come, yet here we are. This is huge to bring Pit Stop TV to the series. This is big stuff for me personally, and I will be forever grateful, even if it's just this one season, to John Barry for having us along for the ride. That does conclude our coverage tonight, however, of the NORC iRacing Series at Daytona International Speedway. And we at Pit Stop TV thank you for tuning in and joining us for tonight's action, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. The channel stays active weekly. You can catch a variety of racing throughout the coming days. We're off air, though, until Friday night when the LTAC Cup Series goes triangle racing up in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania, of course, at Pocono Raceway. Sunday, Cross Series League Racing goes for Pro 2 Light Round number 2 at Phoenix Raceway, the legacy version thereof. That's going to be a lot of fun. Not just the Phoenix Raceway, the Phoenix Raceway Rallycross course. We saw actually a few jumps almost in the BRPI Racing Series last night at Charlotte. No, it's going to be crazy. We've got big, heavy, underpowered Pro 2 lights as opposed to the actual Pro 2s that are going to be beating and banging. If you didn't catch Sunday night's action from Charlotte, I highly recommend you go back and check it out. XSLR gives us great racing week in, week out, and they change things up. It's really, really exciting stuff. The dirt road portion of the schedule, my favorite personally. I want you all to go back and check it out from Sunday night this past weekend. Of course, after Sunday, we do finally crown a champion then in the aforementioned BRPI Racing Series. We are going to Bristol Motor Speedway, not the pavement. We aren't racing tour mods. No, we are going to Dirt Bristol with the BRPI Racing Series Big Block Modifieds, the Northeast Mods as they're called through a lot of the rest of the country. It's going to be tons of fun. I cannot wait for those big guys to be slinging it around the Bristol Motor Speedway. If yesterday's Cup race was any indication of the action we can expect, oh man, it's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, as mentioned, next Tuesday we go to Kansas. NORC has 24 races left. This should be a pretty intriguing second contest of the season. Make sure to tune in at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to follow us over on Facebook at www.facebook.com/pitstoptv, on Twitter at pitstoptv_, on Twitch at www.twitch.tv/pit_stop_tv, and on YouTube at www.youtube.com/c/pitstoptv1. For all of Pit Stop TV, Eric Brennan and Trey Shuttlesworth with me on the mic this evening, Emerson Arden holding things down on social media. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Andrew Cardinale IV, and we will see you next time.